Chapter 209. The last time Yun Shang came to the general's residence was more than a year ago. At that time, her clothes were ragged and she had just left Banana Leaf Village. She was just a poor little sorcerer who came to seek refuge in the general's residence. When she arrived at the entrance of the Martial Saint General's residence, she was ridiculed by Tang Yu's dog. But now that she had entered the general's residence again, she was already a respected elder of the Wushuan Everlasting School's medicine hall. This was something that Yun Sangxue and her son would never have dreamed of. The guards at the door were obviously very familiar with Zhanli. When they saw him, they respectfully greeted him as the deputy director. "Second brother, are you all right? There is a new doctor in the martial arts school's medicine hall. Her medical skills are very high. I brought her here to take a look at second brother." Even though the Medicine Emperor Pavilion had already declared that Yun Songlong's disability was incurable, Zhanli still did not give up. All these years, every time he met an outstanding doctor, they would bring him to the Martial Saint General's residence. But there was no follow-up. The guards of the general's residence were also used to this. But when they looked at Yun Shang again, suspicion appeared on their faces. The doctor that Zhanli brought this time was a little too young. In terms of appearance, she seemed to be about the same as young Master Tang Yu of the general's residence. At this age, the young master of the residence only knew how to eat, drink, gamble, and fight. Zhanli did not have any intention of blaming the two. If he had not seen Yun Shang's medical skills, he would definitely not believe that this little girl in front of him had such amazing medical skills. After asking around, he found out that Yun Songlong was in the residence. He brought Yun Shang directly to the courtyard where Yun Songlong lived. The Martial Saint General's residence was indeed worthy of being a general's residence. The interior structure was simple and elegant, with tall gates and wide courtyards, and neatly trimmed trees. Yun Shang walked smoothly along the way. Although she did not see anyone along the way, Yun Shang could faintly sense that in an unknown corner, there were pairs of vigilant eyes watching her surroundings. Just as she walked a few steps into the residence, an old man came in front of her. When Zhanli saw him, he hurriedly bowed. "Old General." The person who came was the famous Martial Saint General of Zhou State, Yun Ba. He was his own grandfather? Yun Shang lowered her head and secretly sized up Yun Ba. This was the first time she had seen the legendary Martial Saint Old General. Yun Ba was about 70 years of age. After many years of fighting on the battlefield, his face was as rough as old tree bark. He had a square face, dark purple skin, and gray hair. The most intimidating thing about the old general was his eyes. Even though his eye sockets were deep and filled with wrinkles, one could feel the murderous aura emanating from them just by looking at them. "Combat strength, you're here. What kind of doctor did they find to treat Songhai this time? You have to take care of such a big place like Wushuan Limitless School, and you still have to worry about him." Yun Ba chuckled and stroked his beard. He had watched combat strength grow up, and had also watched him overcome all obstacles to reach his current position. If the disaster on the battlefield hadn't happened in his early years, he probably wouldn't have left the military camp. He would definitely have grown up with Yun Songlong to become the most dazzling generals in Zhou State. Unfortunately, the old general's eyes darkened, and he looked again at the doctor beside combat strength. His gaze was sharp, and he immediately noticed the magic scepter at Yun Shang's waist. When he saw the scepter, his expression changed slightly. The incident with Yun Songhai back then had caused the entire Yun residence to harbor a strong enmity towards magicians. Combat strength knew this as well, but why did he bring a magician to the general's residence today? Seeing a layer of anger surface on Yun Songhai's face, Zhanli hurriedly explained, "Old General, this is a doctor that our medicine hall invited. Don't look at her young age, her medical skills are very superb." Magicians were prevalent in Zhou State in recent years. Normally, the manners of third-rank officials and above would have a few assistants, and there was no lack of magicians among them. However, the Martial Saint General's residence didn't have a single magician. The reason for this was related to the eldest son of the general's residence, Yun Songhai, who had been away from home for many years. "She's a doctor? Then why is she still wearing a magic scepter?" Yun Ba glanced sideways at Yun Shang. Ordinary people would be scared out of their wits by Yun Songhai's glare, but Yun Shang wasn't afraid at all. Instead, she stared back at Yunba as if she was competing with him. Old General, this child is practicing both magic medicine and ancient medicine. It wasn't that combat strength didn't know that Yunba was prejudiced against magicians, but Yunshang's medical skills had won him over, so he temporarily put aside his misgivings. That's ridiculous. I've never heard of someone learning both magic medicine and ancient medicine at the same time. Furthermore, she's still so young. It's already difficult for her to master just one, let alone both at the same time. What Yunba hated the most was this kind of learning attitude. In the early years, when Yun Songhai was still young, he pestered him to practice both magic and martial arts. His heart softened, and he agreed. Who would have thought that this would create an opportunity for Yun Songhai to switch to magic? Old General, I didn't believe it at first, but this child is indeed here. Combat Strength was afraid that Yunba would unwillingly chase Yunsheng out. Then, Yun Songlong wouldn't have a chance. He explained everything that had happened a few days ago at Wushuan Everlasting School and how the disciple had gone berserk. Yunba listened with a skeptical expression. Are you sure she came up with this on her own? I've never heard of this kind of treatment method. Yunba still didn't believe it. If you don't believe me, then I'm not willing to treat you. Yunshang couldn't be bothered with Yunba's resentment. This old man looked so vicious, so she couldn't be bothered with him. After speaking, she turned to leave. You little girl, you really don't have any respect for your elders. Yunba was also angry. He was already so old and held a high position, but today, he actually had to give in to a little girl. This made him extremely anxious. This old man and young man were both so stubborn even though they had such bad tempers. He couldn't persuade them left or right, and just as he was in a difficult position, Father, quickly come over. Second brother's illness is acting up again, and he's venting his anger. I can't hold him back. Yun Sangshue hurried over with 2 maids. Her face was agitated, and she looked very flustered. When she saw Combat Strength, she nodded at him as a greeting. When Yunba heard this, he no longer had the mood to quarrel with Yunsheng. He rushed to the inner courtyard in a panic. Yin Yun, second brother's hysteria is acting up again. Since you've already come to the general's estate, why are you in such a hurry to leave? Just give me some face and go in to see my second brother first. He is a pitiful person. Combat Strength was arrogant and unyielding. He had never begged anyone so humbly before. At this moment, his eyes were red and his face was full of worry. It turned out that Yun Songlong's physical disability wasn't the only thing that had troubled him all these years. What was more serious was that after that battle, he had never recovered from the trauma to his heart. At this moment, a beast-like roar came from the inner courtyard. Combat Strength couldn't hold it in any longer. He didn't care if Yunsheng agreed or not. He grabbed Yunsheng and rushed to the courtyard where Yun Songlong lived. Chapter 210. Yunsheng was unwillingly brought to the courtyard where Yun Songlong lived. The courtyard was in a mess. The guards and maids of the Yun residence were all hiding far away. Even Yun Sangshue only dared to watch from afar. Only Yunba rushed into the room with an ashen face. The bestial roar came from Yun Songlong. Not long after Yunba rushed into the room quieted down. Second brother, Zhanli also followed him into the room. Yunsheng was also brought in by him. I won't treat someone who doesn't trust me. Yunsheng was also a little annoyed. However, the moment she entered the room and saw the man who had been restrained by Yunba, she suddenly felt a lump in her throat and couldn't say a word. It was as if a storm had passed through Yun Songlong's room. The bed, table, tea set, everything within reach had been smashed to pieces. Yunsheng's father, Yun Songhai, was 35 years old this year. Yun Songlong was his second brother and was 1 year younger than him. But the man in front of her looked to be in his 40s, much older than his actual age. His hair and beard were messy, and his clothes were stained with mud and blood. But even so, Yunsheng still recognized this second uncle of hers at a glance. Because Yun Songhai's figure, appearance, and even voice were very similar to her father's. Yunsheng turned around and thought that her father had woken up and was standing in front of her. They were too similar. In front of someone who looked almost exactly like her father, Yunsheng couldn't bear to be ruthless. Father, is second brother all right? Yun Sangxue walked in when she saw that the room had quieted down. She saw Yun Sheng standing side by side with Zhanli, and also noticed the magic scepter on Yun Sheng's body. A layer of disgust appeared on her face. Third sister, she is the doctor I invited. She is here to treat second brother. Ever since Yun Songhai left home, Zhanli and Yun Songlong addressed each other as brother and sister. Zhanli still hoped that Yun Sangxue would speak up for him, but who would have thought that Yun Sangxue would just sneer? Big brother Qi, third sister is very grateful that you are concerned about my second brother's condition. But my second brother's illness, especially his hysteria, is already incurable. Even when Daiguoshu can only ensure that it does not worsen over the years. The little girl in front of you has an unknown background. She's both a sorcerer and a healer. She's neither fish nor fowl, so how can she treat my second brother? Yun Sangshue's tone revealed a strong hostility. Yun Sangxue didn't recognize Yun Sheng, but she subconsciously felt hostility towards Yun Sheng. In other people's eyes, Yun Sangshue's words sounded like she was concerned about her second brother and worried that Yun Sheng was some kind of Mongolian doctor. But the meticulous Yun Sheng heard another layer of meaning. Yun Sangxue was extremely unwilling for someone to treat Yun Songhai's illness. She even hoped that Yun Songhai's condition would worsen. In the general's estate, the old martial saint general was aging day by day because of his two sons. Yun Songhai's whereabouts were unknown and Yun Songlong was in this state. As long as he didn't recover, Yun Sangxue would be able to monopolize the general's estate. Yun Ba was probably the only one who couldn't see through her ambitions. They were siblings from the same father and mother, but Yun Sangxue actually had such wild ambitions. Yun Sheng couldn't help but feel bitterly disappointed. Since Yun Sangxue didn't want to treat him, Yun Sheng had to treat him. Moreover, she could also see that Yun Songhai's illness wasn't simple. The national physician couldn't treat him because he mistook Uncle Yun's illness for hysteria. Using the methods and herbs used to treat hysteria naturally wouldn't be able to treat him. As the saying goes, prescribing the right medicine for the illness. If one couldn't even accurately judge the illness, how could they treat it? That was why Yun Songlong's illness had been repeated over and over again all these years without any progress. When Yun Sheng said this, everyone in the room was dumbfounded. Even Zhanli couldn't help but break out in cold sweat because of Yun Sheng's words. This lass's tone was so arrogant. She actually said that the national physician of Zhou State had misjudged the illness. He was the national physician of the Medicine Emperor Pavilion and had stopped practicing medicine for many years. Back then, he had reluctantly agreed to treat Yun Songlong because of Yun Ba. Yet, Yun Sheng said that he had misjudged the illness. Look, I already said that she's a quack. She dares to question the diagnosis of the national physician. How old is she? She's really audacious. Yun Sangxue rejoiced in Yun Sheng's misfortune and waited for her to be chased out of the general's estate. Everyone makes mistakes, and the national physician isn't an exception. He judged it to be hysteria because the symptoms of hysteria are mental confusion and abnormal behavior. Uncle Yun's behavior does seem like he has hysteria, but what he actually has isn't hysteria. It's post-war trauma. Yun Sheng didn't feel angry when she was questioned by everyone. Ignorance is blameless. The term post-war trauma was probably unheard of in the boundless world for thousands of years, let alone seeing it. When Yun Sheng saw Yun Songlong, she initially thought that he had hysteria because his symptoms were too similar to hysteria. However, she asked Zhanli and found out that Yun Songlong had been taking medication for hysteria for many years, and there hadn't been any improvement. Recalling that Yun Songlong only got this disease after the war, Yun Sheng recalled that when she was in the Americas in her previous life, she had met a few soldiers from Country M when she was doing free medical treatment for the International Red Cross Association. After participating in the war against Country Y, they had returned to their country. Even though they were healthy, they had all shown symptoms similar to hysteria. Yun Sheng's final diagnosis was post-war trauma. Father, quickly chase this liar out. What post-war trauma? I've lived for 30 years, and I've never heard of it. Yun Sangxue ordered someone to chase Yun Sheng out. Zhanli tried to dissuade her, but he was reprimanded by Yun Sangxue instead. It doesn't matter if you don't believe me, but I can tell you with certainty that post-war trauma is more or less present in any soldier who has participated in a war. especially one where there were heavy casualties. However, Uncle Yun's condition is more serious because of the double blow to his body and mind. Yunsheng glanced at Yunba. On the battlefield, corpses littered the ground. Sometimes, even the innocent women and children of other countries were killed. Anyone who saw this scene would definitely be traumatized. He definitely knew about Yunba, who was once a general of Zhou State, and Zhangli as well. Therefore, Yunsheng's words caused the two of them to sink into deep thought. A few guards from the Yun residence had already rushed over. They pushed and shoved Yunsheng, wanting to chase her out of the courtyard. At this moment, Yunba suddenly said, "Wait, let her see, take a good look. Little girl, if you can't figure it out, don't blame this old man for being impolite." Although Yunba's words were still very strict, his gaze had faded from the initial disgust and harshness. His attitude towards Yunsheng had also improved. Yunsheng's words just now had touched on a secret that he had hidden in the depths of his heart for many years. Chapter 211. Since even Yunba had spoken, there was nothing Yun Sangxue could do even if he wanted to chase Yunsheng away. Yun Songlong was still in a state of delirium. He had a crazed look on his face and could only be forcefully restrained by Yunba to ensure that he did not harm anyone else. Let me make this clear first. I am a dual practitioner of magic medicine and ancient medicine. When I treat him later, I will use a combination of magic and ancient medicine. There is no need to make a fuss. Yunsheng knew that magic could not be used in the Yun residence. This was very similar to Wushuan Wuji School. But now, for Yun Songlong's illness, Yunba had no choice but to break this precedent. Taking out the bewitching bone scepter, Yunsheng began to chant. Her lips moved and a gentle light shone on the scepter. Elementary water magic, cloud dream I slumber. Yunsheng needed to check on Yun Songlong's condition, so she had to calm him down first. A light blue, ice-cold water vapor enveloped Yunba and Yun Songlong. Father! Yun Sangxue was afraid that Yunsheng would hurt his father and wanted to stop her. Don't worry, she has no ill intentions. Due to his prejudice against magicians, Yunba had almost never used any magic to heal his injuries. Usually, even if he was seriously injured, he would only swallow some pills. This was the first time he had faced a healing magic. Being surrounded by this slightly glowing water vapor, Yunba felt much calmer. Yun Songlong, who was originally restrained by him, also stopped roaring and moving. Yunsheng took the opportunity to let Yunba release Yun Songlong. She walked in front of Yun Songlong and looked at him at eye level. A golden light flashed across Yunsheng's eyes. "Young General Yun, tell me what you saw. Tell me." Yunsheng's voice was very gentle, and her words were also very slow. Modern medical technology was much more advanced than the boundless world. Especially mental illnesses, medicine could only alleviate them, but it was very difficult to cure them completely. The reason why Yun Songlong was hallucinating and losing control was because his memory was still stuck on the war from several years ago. The purpose of Yunsheng using Yunming's ice sleep was to calm him down first. Then, she could use the real treatment method. The best treatment for post-war syndromes was hypnosis. Under the effect of Yunsheng's frozen dream, Yunsheng was able to make full use of Shinnong's pupil. It was as if Yun Songlong had fallen into a dream. His entire body trembled violently, and his voice was filled with regret and pain. Dead, they're all dead. The brothers of the Yun family army, more than 1,000 people, are all dead. Rivers of blood and corpses are everywhere. It's all because of me. I won't let them off. He was recalling the battle that had greatly damaged the vitality of the entire Zhou state. Amidst his trembling voice, a bloody massacre reappeared in front of everyone. Zhangli closed his eyes in pain. Yunba's tall back seemed to bend a little at that moment. Only Yun Sangxue had a calm expression. That was because she had never truly experienced a war. Young General Yun, relax a little. Everything is already in the past. That battle had already ended several years ago. You are very safe now. You are in the general's residence. Those soldiers, their corpses and families have also been settled. Yunsheng sighed in her heart. Shinnong's pupils shrank, and a golden light flashed again. Yun Songlong only felt a heavy blow to his head. It was as if someone had woken him up from his long slumber. His originally turbid eyes gradually regained their clarity. The moment he regained consciousness, Yun Songlong saw several pairs of caring eyes. Father, big brother Jean, third sister, why are all of you here? Yun Songlong was usually clear-headed, but this time, when he woke up, he felt that his head wasn't as heavy as before. He felt much more relaxed. He breathed in and out and felt a wave of comfort in his chest. It was as if he had gotten rid of a heavy burden. Second brother, how do you feel? Zhang Li's face was full of disbelief. From his perspective, Yun Sheng didn't do anything just now. She only said a few words to Yun Songlong, and then Yun Songlong gradually regained consciousness. He didn't use a single drop of medicine, and he regained consciousness without a single needle. This was too incredible. Who is this? Yun Songlong only just realized that there was an unfamiliar girl in the room. In her hand, she was holding a magic scepter. A magician? Father and third sister actually allowed a magician to enter the general's residence. This was really unprecedented. Yun Songlong carefully looked at Yun Sheng. He realized that Yun Sheng looked very familiar, as if he had seen her somewhere before. Third brother, this is the newly invited elder of our dojo. Don't be fooled by her young age. Her medical skills are very miraculous. Her views are also very different from others. Just now, she said that your illness wasn't hysteria, but some kind of war trauma syndrome. Let her take a look at your hand again. Zhang Li urged. Big brother Zhan, thanks for your kindness. My hands have long been crippled. Why do you have to go through so much trouble and waste so much manpower and resources? Yun Songlong understood his father's temper very well. Every time a magician was mentioned, the old man would explode. It was already a miracle that this female magician could stay in the Yun residence. There is no way to treat your right hand, but your left hand is still there. The veins in your left hand are only injured. If there is a chance to open them up, even if you can't practice martial arts, you can at least live a normal life. Zhang Li sighed. He knew that for many years, Yun Songlong's heart had died. Coupled with his hysteria, he had long given up on his hands. Now that the hysteria that had troubled him for many years had been resolved, the next step would be to treat his hands. Yun Sheng's gaze fell on Yun Songlong's hands. With one look, she understood why Zhang Li said this. It was rumored that the second son of the general's residence, Yun Songlong's hands were injured by the enemy and his body was crippled. However, in reality, only Yun Songlong's right hand was chopped off. His left hand was still hanging by his side. However, Yun Sheng also noticed that although his left hand was still there, it was hanging limply by his side. His skin was loose and sickly white. Due to not using it for many years, Yun Songlong's left hand was already showing signs of wilting. Compared to his body size, it was one size smaller. According to Yun Sheng's experience, if a cure was not found soon, once the veins and nerves atrophied, Yun Songlong's left hand would really be crippled. Uncle, can you let me take a look at your hand? Yun Sheng took the initiative to step forward. She had originally wanted to leave, but now she suddenly changed her attitude. Little girl, didn't you say that you wanted to leave? The Martial Saint General's residence does not welcome you. Yun Ba's temper flared as he stomped his feet. Shut up, you're so noisy. When a doctor is treating a patient, the patient's family should not interrupt. A sullen expression appeared on Yun Sheng's delicate face as she rolled her eyes at Yun Ba. Hey, what kind of tone is that? Yun Ba's hair stood on end. His gray hair almost stood on end, making him look like an angry old cat. But Yun Sheng just ignored him. This made Yun Ba feel as if he had punched cotton. He was completely at a loss for words. Zhang Li, on the other hand, couldn't help but laugh. Even Yun Songlong's face had a hint of a smile. When Yun Songshue saw this scene, his expression darkened. Chapter 212. Seeing that Yun Ba was angered by a little girl to the point of not daring to say anything, Yun Songlong smiled and said, Father, you're already so old, don't vent your anger on a child. Little girl, it's fine if you take a look. The wounds on my body are a little hideous, don't be scared. Yun Songlong's tone was very amiable, causing Yun Songshue to grit her teeth. Yun Songlong had never even spoken to his own nephew, Tang Yu, in such a nice tone. Second brother, and Zhanli really looked down on them. Yun Songshues secretly cursed, and her hatred for Yun Shang grew. Even though it was their first time meeting, Yun Songlong had a very good impression of Yun Shang. He couldn't explain why, but he felt that although this little girl's temper was a little fiery, her personality was very frank and cute. He thought of his eldest brother whom he hadn't seen for many years. At that time, his eldest brother had left the residence in a hurry, and his sister-in-law was already pregnant with the Yun family's flesh and blood. If that child was still alive, he would probably be as smart and likable as this little girl in front of him. Yun Sheng first looked at his right hand. Yun Sheng originally thought that Yun Songlong's right hand had been cut off by a sharp weapon, but after she examined it, she found that this wasn't the case. "Uncle, was your right hand directly torn off by some ferocious beast?" An expert could tell the truth when they made a move. Yun Songlong's old injury had been there for almost 10 years, but Yun Sheng was able to make such an accurate judgment just by looking at the wound. This made Yun Ba very surprised. Could it be that this little girl really started learning medical skills when she was in her mother's womb? Zhanli hurriedly stepped forward and removed Yun Songlong's clothes. Only then did Yun Songlong's hand appear. Yun Sheng took out the Four Seasons colored glass needles. The moment the needles appeared, Yun Ba, who was originally complaining at the side, immediately fell silent. With his eyesight, he could tell that the medical needles in Yun Sheng's hands were magic tools. Yun Sheng examined Yun Songlong's left hand. As she expected, his left hand had severely atrophied. His skin had no elasticity, and the blood vessels inside were on the verge of drying up. Yun Sheng pricked a few major acupoints on his hand with a needle and asked Yun Songlong for his reaction. Yun Songlong had been pricked by countless doctors more than 100 times. He was already used to it and did not feel anything. "Little girl, you don't have to try anymore. Even if my hand is roasted over a fire or frozen in ice, it won't feel anything. It's already crippled." Yun Songlong had already gotten over it. With such a left hand, he would rather it be completely chopped off, just like his right hand. Yun Sheng glanced at Yun Songlong. When she was examining Yun Songlong, she found that there were many wounds on his left hand. Those were burns and even frostbites. Seeing the wounds, Yun Ba and combat strength fell silent. When Yun Songlong's hands were crippled, he went through a period of self-torture. Those wounds were all left behind at that time. In order to prevent Yun Songlong from taking things too hard, Yun Ba had no choice but to order his bodyguards to keep a close watch on him. Later on, Yun Songlong only managed to survive the darkest days after combat strength, and Yun Songlong spent a night together. "Uncle, I still need to prick a few more needles. If you feel anything, immediately shout out." Yun Sheng sighed in her heart. The two brothers of the Yun family were indeed plagued with misfortune. If not for her father, Yun Songhai, leaving home, Yun Songlong would not be alone and trapped in the enemy camp. Even if it was for her father, she had to think of a way to save Yun Songlong. Yun Songlong wanted to refuse, but when he saw the sincerity on Yun Sheng's small face, he did not know why, but he could not harden his heart. He did not refuse or agree. Yun Sheng started to prick him again. This time, Yun Sheng used the Yin family's ancestral soul healing needle. The soul healing needle was divided into dark needles and bright needles. Yun Sheng used the dark needles to test whether Yun Songlong's left hand could still be saved. Yun Sheng's jade marrow technique had already reached the 3rd level. This also meant that she could use the 3rd level of the soul healing needle. When she pricked him with the needle, the jade marrow technique in her body immediately activated. The dark needles silently pierced through Yun Songlong's skin and followed his blood vessels into his arm. After the first dark needle entered his body, it was like a stone sinking into the sea. Yun Songlong did not react at all. She had failed. Yun Sheng was not discouraged. The second time, she used 2 more dark needles. Yun Songlong still did not react. Dark needles consumed a lot of internal energy. After 2 dark needles, Yun Sheng's face was already flushed red. "Don't." Yun Songlong tried to persuade her again. Suddenly, the 4 needles in Yun Sheng's hand moved together. The 4 Seasons colored glass needles accompanied the power of the dark needles. Like a sudden downpour, like a flood or a ferocious beast, they poured out together. A wave of cold and hot numbness came from Yun Songlong's fingers. He cried out in pain. His left hand trembled as if it had been electrocuted. It was just a moment, but it caused the expressions of the four people present to change. The most agitated one was Yun Ba. He completely ignored the fact that he had just reprimanded Yun Sheng a second earlier. Songlong, your hand. My hand. I just regained feeling. Even though it was only for a moment, Yun Songlong clearly felt that his arm had regained feeling. Even though the feeling was very short, his hand had indeed regained feeling. Little girl, can Songlong's hand still be saved? Isn't that right? Say something. Yun Ba had been on the battlefield all his life and had never bowed his head to anyone. But at this moment, he was just a pitiful father. He looked at Yun Sheng, half pleadingly. He hoped that Yun Sheng could tell him that Yun Songlong's hand could still be saved. Even if it was just a left hand, it was enough to give Songlong, who had been dispirited for many years, a little hope. Yun Sheng's heart was filled with bitterness. How should she answer? Yun Songlong's hand was not completely damaged. Yun Sheng had at least proved one thing through the dark needles just now. Yun Songlong's hand was only restricted by a special method. Earlier, she had tested the dark needles twice, but there was no reaction. That was because the power of the dark needles was not enough to break through that method. But if she could cultivate to the 5th level of the Jade Marrow technique, she would be able to release the power of 5 dark needles at once. Then, there might be a chance for her to break through that shackle. But right now, she did not have any other ideas. Father, don't scare the lass. I'm afraid that she is also helpless. Yun Songlong could tell that Yun Sheng was in a difficult position. He did not blame Yun Sheng. After so many years, she was already the only doctor who could make his hand feel. Even the great grandmaster of the Medicine Emperor Pavilion was unable to make his hand feel anything. Yin Yun, if you have any difficulties, feel free to tell me. As long as Zhonli is able to do it, I will definitely not frown. As long as you can cure second brother's illness, I can grant you another sect medallion. Zhonli was also moved. He saw the hope of Yun Songlong's recovery from Yun Sheng's body. Everyone, it's not that I don't want to treat him. It's just that I don't have any way to treat him right now. To be honest, young General Yun's hand is not really crippled. It's just that his battle chi has been restricted by a special method. In order to make it easier for everyone to understand, Yun Sheng simply drew a simple diagram of a human body on the ground. Thank you to Banksia, Laying Egg, and Amethyst Snow for their tips. Thank you girls for your crazy votes. Happy Chinese Valentine's Day. Chapter 213. The most important thing for a warrior's body was the circulation of Do Qi. The restriction on Yun Songlong's left arm was very similar to the magic lock Yun Sheng's magic power was sealed in Wushuan Wuji School. However, the technique used by the person who did this to Yun Songlong was much more powerful than ordinary magic locks. Until now, only Yun Sheng was able to use the Yin family's ancestral medical soul divine needle and combine it with the Jade Marrow technique to break the restriction. To cure Uncle Yun's hand, we need at least 50% of our Yin family's unique inner energy. However, I have only reached the 3rd level, so I am temporarily helpless. However, if I break through the 5th level in the future, I have absolute confidence that I can cure Uncle Yun. Using the human body structure diagram, Yun Sheng explained the treatment and her current difficulties inconcisely. After hearing Yun Sheng's words, the others all came to a realization. Yun Ba did not speak for a long time. On the other hand, Yun Songlong's expression was the calmest of all. Thank you, little godly doctor, for being honest with me. Actually, my hand has been crippled for many years. I am not in a hurry to recover. Little godly doctor, you don't have to blame yourself. If I am lucky, maybe my hand can recover in the future. Yun Songlong looked kindly at Yun Sheng. For some reason, although it was his first time meeting Yun Sheng, Yun Songlong felt very close to her. This feeling of closeness was even greater than that of his own nephew, Tang Yu. Perhaps feeling Yun Songlong's friendliness, Yun Sheng thought for a while. My current skills are not enough, but I have another method. It cannot completely recover Uncle Yun's hand, but it can at least guarantee that your hand will not continue to deteriorate in the next few years. It can also improve the signs of muscle atrophy in your arm. The Jade Marrow technique was a threshold of 3 years. However, in the past 2 years, Yun Shang had broken through from the first level to the third level. Although there was some luck involved, it also made Yun Shang realize that it was much easier to cultivate the Jade Marrow technique in the Boundless Land than in the modern world. The reason for this was probably because the sun essence in the Boundless world was much purer than the heavily polluted modern society. The method that Yun Shang mentioned was the blood cloud beast blood that she had experimented with earlier. The blood cloud beast blood was a very good medicine to strengthen the body. Combined with Yun Shang's special acupuncture technique, Yun Songlong's left hand could absorb part of the beast's blood, which could also improve the deterioration of his left hand. I will return to the medicine hall now and prepare the appropriate beast blood and medicinal herbs. In the future, I will visit your residence every 5 days to perform acupuncture on you. Yun Shang ignored the dumbfounded Yunba and left the general's residence. Haha, the little girl's temper is quite bad, but her medical skills and medical ethics are very good. Since she said that there's a cure for second brother's hand, then there must be a cure. Zhanli sighed with emotion, his face full of smiles. She has no respect for her elders and speaks so rudely in front of her elders. One look and I can tell that she wasn't raised in a good family. Yunba recalled Yun Shang's attitude towards him just now and was filled with anger. Children nowadays were really too unlikable. Father, that child's temper is very similar to yours. Yun Songlong smiled. Nonsense, who's similar to her? Zhanli, we haven't met for a long time. I have a few jars of good wine in the wine cellar. Help this old man get them. Yunba sent Zhanli to the wine cellar in the residence to get the wine. Yunba loved drinking the most in his life. Regardless of whether he was happy or unhappy, he liked to drink a few cups. Every time Zhanli came back, he would get drunk. After Zhanli left, Yunba snorted and said with some anger, Songlong, until now, you still refuse to tell father who injured your hands back then? It turned out that Yunba's drinking wine was fake. The real reason was that he deliberately called Zhanli. All these years, Yunba had always thought that Yun Songlong's hands were injured when he was ambushed by the enemy and besieged. However, when that stubborn little girl said it just now, he figured out that something was wrong. His right hand was torn apart by a ferocious beast, and his left hand was restrained by a special method. Yun Songlong was Yunba's son. It could be said that all his martial arts skills were inherited from Yunba. Of the 2 sons of the Yun family, Yun Songhai was talented in magic and Yun Songlong was also very talented in martial arts. That year, when Yun Songlong was attacked by the enemy, he was already a martial arts grandmaster, and his current combat strength was not much different. If he had used all his strength, Yun Songlong would have at least been able to escape unscathed even if the enemy had 10,000 soldiers. However, he was defeated. Not only was he defeated, but his hands were also crippled, and he ended up in his current state. However, if the enemy really wanted to kill Yun Songlong, why would they only cripple his hands? Thinking about it, the enemy either had a deep hatred for the Yun family and wanted the Yun family to live a life worse than death, or they had some misgivings and did not dare to kill Yun Songlong. The martial Saint Old General himself could not figure out the reason for this, but Yun Songlong was also unwilling to say more. After going back and forth, the truth of the matter had not been exposed. Yun Songlong's pain had only lasted for so many years. Father, you don't need to ask about what happened that year. It was because I was not as skilled as the enemy that I was injured and embarrassed the martial Saint Old General's residence. Yun Songlong's expression was pained. His words showed that he was unwilling to talk about the past. The wine is here. Second brother, you need to consume beast blood and cannot drink wine. This jar of good wine is for the old general and me. Zhanli, who did not know what was going on, carried a jar of wine over. There was hope for Yun Songlong's hands. Zhanli was happy for him from the bottom of his heart. Today, he would not leave until he was drunk. Brother Qi, I still have something to ask you. That little girl just now, what is her name? Also, her medical skills are very special. I don't think I have seen such acupuncture in Zhou State. Yun Songlong felt that he had seen Yun Shang somewhere before. Her name is Yin Yun. She is an exchange student that I poached from the Imperial Magic Academy. As for where she learned from, I only heard that she lives in a medical clinic in the city. That was all that Zhonli knew. As they spoke, Yun Shang had already retrieved the beast blood. She instructed Yun Songlong's attendant to bring it back to his room and began to tell Yun Songlong the taboo of using the beast blood. After soaking his hands in the beast blood, Yun Songlong's skin was much rosier than usual. Yun Shang also inserted a few needles into his hands. In the courtyard, Yunba and Zhonli drank wine and talked loudly about the current situation in Zhou State. Yunba had a fiery temper and would occasionally scold the civil officials in the imperial court. Zhonli could only smile and drink at the side. Unknowingly, the sun had set. When Yun Shang walked past the courtyard, she heard Yun Songhai mutter, "Yun Songhai, you unfilial son." She turned around and saw the old general's tall body leaning over the stone table in the courtyard. He was already drunk and looked exceptionally bleak. She didn't know why, but she felt a sense of sadness in her heart, and her hatred for the general's residence was no longer as strong. Chapter 2:14. Even though Yun Songlong's hand couldn't be healed immediately, Yun Songlong's PTSD gradually recovered under Yun Shang's treatment. His relapses became less frequent, from once every 10 days to once every month. In the end, he was completely healed. Yun Songlong's hand also gradually regained feeling under the effects of numerous hidden needles. Even though he couldn't directly clench his fist, he could already feel the warmth and pain in his hand. This made Yunba, who originally had some opinions about Yun Shang, speechless. The entire Yun residence was overjoyed by this news, except for Yun Sangxue, who wasn't very happy. Yunba had no choice but to tacitly accept PTSD, a condition that had never appeared in the boundless continent. However, Yun Shang was still unwilling to go to the general's residence frequently, in case that old man would blow his beard and glare at her every time she saw him. Zhonli had a lot of trust in Yun Shang and trusted her even more. Unknowingly, more than half a month had passed. On this day, Yun Shang went to the general's residence to help Yun Songlong with his daily acupuncture treatment. She also checked on him to see if his PTSD had recovered. After spending some time with Yun Shang's opinion of the Martial Saint General's residence changed slightly. Originally, Yun Shang thought that Yun Songlong was as unreasonable as Yun Sangxue and could get along with him. Only then did she realize that Yun Songlong was a very easygoing and knowledgeable person. Even though he was bathed in blood on the battlefield, there wasn't a trace of hostility around him. When his hands were still healthy, he still liked to play the flute and drum and was a rare talent among Zhou State's generals who excelled in both the pen and the sword. He also told Yun Shang a lot about Zhou State's local customs and practices, which broadened Yun Shang's horizons. Yun Songlong and Yun Shang also got along very well. He originally thought that Yun Shang was just a precocious doctor and was at most a little smarter than ordinary people. However, the more he interacted with her, the more Yun Songlong felt that her speech and understanding were extraordinary. This lad is not a fish in a pond. Big Brother Zhan has found a treasure this time. Yun Songlong secretly praised. Uncle Yun, your PTSD has been cured. Your left hand has also improved recently. Your atrophied muscles have also recovered quite a bit. In the future, you only need to pay attention to your diet and rest, and your body will gradually recover. Although you can't directly cultivate Do Qi, you can do some simple martial arts training. Yun Shang put away the Four Seasons colored glass needles and discussed the illness with Yun Songlong. Because the veins in his left hand were blocked, Yun Songlong could not directly circulate his Do Qi. However, his body's foundation was very good. If he recovered properly, even if he could not return to his original condition, his body would be healthy and pain-free. Yun Songlong retracted his thoughts. He only thought that Yun Shang was comforting him. With his half-crippled body, how could he return to his original peak condition? He thought for a while, then suddenly said, "Yin lass, Uncle Yun wants to ask you for a favor." During this period of time, Yun Shang and Yun Songlong had already become familiar with each other. Yun Songlong was a forthright person, and he did not call Yun Shang Divine Dr. Yin. Instead, he directly called her Yin Lass. Yun Shang was quite used to this intimate form of address. "Uncle, just say what you want." However, let me say this first. It's best that this matter has nothing to do with that stubborn father of yours. Yun Shang curled her lips. Forgiving Yun Songlong was one thing. Forgiving Yun Ba was another. Even now, every time Yun Ba saw Yun Shang, he would always make a strange snorting sound. In return, Yun Shang would always roll her eyes at him. When he heard Yun Shang's angry tone, Yun Songlong had the urge to laugh. In reality, Yun Songlong did not reject the childish bickering between his father and Yun Shang. Instead, he liked it. This gave Yun Songlong the illusion that his grandchildren were happy together. Compared to his incompetent nephew Tang Yu, who only knew how to cause trouble for the general's estate, Yun Songlong would rather Yun Shang be his niece. I want you to help me take a look at those brothers of the Yun family army. Yun Songlong and Yun Shang left the general's estate together. Zhou State revered martial arts, and the general's estate of the martial Saint General was in great favor for a time. The previous emperor of Zhou State allowed the Yun family army to form their own personal army. The Yun family army that Yun Songlong mentioned was the Yun family's private army. The army only belonged to the Yun family, and they received their salaries directly from the Yun family's treasury. They were mainly responsible for patrolling and inspecting the Yun family's territory. After Yun Songlong was injured and returned to the estate, he had not gone to the Yun family army for many years. The matters of the army were all handed over to his third sister, Yun Songxue, to manage. Bringing Yun Shang to the Yun family army was because after Yun Songlong was defeated many years ago, a group of soldiers who were lucky enough to survive with him were all placed in the Yun family army. These brothers had accompanied Yun Songlong through fire and water, but because of their family background, they were unable to receive the same treatment as Yun Songlong. It was said that these brothers had not been living well these past few years. Yun Songlong had always wanted to visit his old comrades, but he was suffering from a strange illness and could not go out. Now that his body had recovered, he could not wait to see his old comrades. In the past, he did not know about the war trauma syndrome. After being reminded by Yun Shang, he realized that other than him, there were probably many other brothers in the Yun family army who had suffered from this strange illness. The uncle and niece walked together on the streets of Yujing, facing the crowds, carriages, and horses coming and going, as well as the streets of Yujing that were no longer the same as they were many years ago. Yun Songlong felt a little afraid for a moment. He was like a lost child, tossing and turning, not knowing how to face the crowd. After Yun Songlong suffered from the hysteria, in order to prevent him from hurting others, Yun Ba had always forbidden him from going out. This was the first time in many years that he had left the general's estate alone. Just as Yun Songlong was hesitating, a warm feeling came from his left hand. Looking down, he saw Yun Shang's soft little hand holding Yun Songlong's large hand. Although the feeling was very weak, Yun Songlong could see the consolation in Yun Shang's encouraging eyes. He smiled and strode into the crowd. After walking a few steps, Yun Songlong felt a wave of hunger. Only then did he remember that he had been so focused on chatting with Yun Shang in the morning that he had forgotten to eat. It was Uncle Yun who neglected it. It should be time for lunch. You are at the age where you are growing. The big pots of rice in the Yun family army camp are not very nutritious, Yun Songlong said with an embarrassed smile. He chose a famous and old restaurant in the city and wanted to bring Yun Shang to eat their fill. When the uncle and niece of the Yun family entered, they did not notice that there were 3 pairs of eyes looking at them from above the restaurant. That's strange. Am I seeing things? Isn't that the little girl from the martial arts center? Why is she walking with a middle-aged man? It can't be. In a private room in the restaurant sat Yi Baiming, Cheng Bai, and Bu Jiuxiao. The 3 of them frequented this restaurant on a daily basis. They did not expect to meet Yun Shang and Yun Songlong here. Yun Shang and Yun Songlong walked in hand. This could easily cause misunderstandings. Yi Baiming's gaze darkened slightly as he looked at the smiling Yun Shang. For some reason, he felt that the smile on Yun Shang's face was very dazzling. Chapter 215. Bu Jiuxiao saw that Yi Baiming's expression wasn't good, so he looked over as well. With one look, he was so shocked that he immediately stood up. Yun Songlong. The martial Saint General's residence's Yun Songlong? His hysteria has been cured? Bu Jiuxiao saw clearly that the thin man sitting opposite Yun Shang was Yun Songlong. He was different from Yi Baiming and Cheng Bai. Cheng Bai's ancestors were civil officials, while Yi Baiming was blind in his early years. The two of them had never seen the once prominent second young master of the Yun family, Yun Songlong, in Zhou State. The Marshal Saint General's residence had many outstanding people in its early years. Yun Songhai was the youngest sky magician in Zhou State, and his younger brother, Yun Songlong, was also the youngest general in Zhou State. The Marshal Saint General was old, and the Marquis of Jiayuan guarded the Jade capital. Yun Songlong rose to prominence at that time. He went to war when he was 12, and when he was 25, his battle skills were invincible. At that time, Bu Jiuxiao was only a 5 or 6-year-old child, but in his childhood memories, the name Yun Songlong was synonymous with hero. Yun Songlong was disabled and left Zhou State's military camp, which made the young Bu Jiuxiao sad for a long time. He originally thought that he wouldn't have the chance to see his childhood idol appear again in this lifetime, but a few hundred meters away, the person chatting happily was indeed Yun Songlong. What? You said that middle-aged man is Yun Songlong? Then isn't he Master's sworn brother? No wonder Master's mood was so good recently. So he introduced the little divine doctor to Yun Songlong. When Cheng Bai heard that it was Yun Songlong, he also looked over anxiously. Yun Songlong had been away from the eyes of the people for too long, so long that most of the people in Jade Capital already didn't recognize the Zhou State's general who once commanded the battlefield. So it's just to see a doctor. Yi Baiming unconsciously let out a sigh of relief. The restaurant Yun Shang and Yun Songlong were in was a famous restaurant in Jade Capital. There were all kinds of people in it, and there were even some singers who were here to earn a living. When the two of them were halfway through their meal, a delicate and pretty singer of about 13 or 14 years old walked over shyly. She held a peeper in her hands and asked softly, "Two guests, the Oriole will sing a little song to liven things up. If the song is to your liking, can you give the Oriole a few copper coins as a reward?" This female singer looked very young and inexperienced, and her voice was trembling a little. Her clothes were very ordinary, but her words and actions did not seem like an ordinary prostitute. Most of these women had no choice but to go out to perform for the sake of their family's livelihood because their family had declined. In a place like a restaurant, there were all kinds of people. A singing girl who looked like a little lamb must have a hard time here. Yun Songlong nodded and took out 5 silver coins and gave them to Oriole. When Oriole saw this, she hurriedly knelt down to thank him and was pulled up by Yun Shang. She gently plucked the strings, and a burst of pipa music that sounded like the tinkling of spring water slowly played in the restaurant. The singing girl Oriole's pipa skills were not very good, but her singing voice was very good. It was sweet and clear, and it was a naturally good voice. Yun Shang had never heard of this kind of live performance in her previous life. Hearing it today, it had a different flavor. On Yun Songlong's face, there was also a look of appreciation. When the song reached its climax, a few gold coins fell from the sky and landed at Oriole's feet. Oriole was startled, and her singing stopped. The pipa in her hand also fell to the ground in fright. A rough voice immediately sounded. "Young lady's voice is not bad." Hearing it makes the young master's hearts tremble. "Come over here and sing a little song. The young masters have plenty of gold coins." After saying that, a burst of unbridled whistling could be heard. Yun Shang raised her head to look. The window in the direction of the restaurant was wide open, and the sound was coming from the private room. Just as the teasing stopped, a few fierce-looking guards came down from upstairs and pulled Oriole, who was in a terrible state, to the private room upstairs. Oriole's cries attracted the attention of everyone in the restaurant, but no one stepped forward to help. The customers were all expressionless, as if they were already used to this kind of scene. An orphan girl who entered the mouths of those foppish men was bound to meet with misfortune. Those who dared to commit murder in such a public place like the restaurant must have a strong family background. Oriole was just a singing girl who had no one to rely on. It was really not worth offending those foppish men in the Jade Capital for her. Even the restaurant owner only shook his head and sighed, but did not step forward to help. "This is too much." Yun Sheng pulled out her magic scepter and was about to take action. But just as she was about to take action, she suddenly noticed that Yun Songlong was not right. Yun Songlong's left hand was slightly trembling because of anger. His hand could move? Seeing this, Yun Sheng put down her magic scepter. None of you touch me, I am the daughter of the Yun family's military officer, Huang Qianyong. The Oriole was dragged all the way, and seeing that she was about to be pulled into a private room, her pale face flushed red with anger. Her shoulders, which were originally trembling with fear, suddenly straightened. She did not know where she got the strength from, but she pushed the guards away and stumbled down the stairs. She was originally the daughter of a military family and lived a carefree life. If not for her father's illness, she would never appear in public in such a place. The Yun family's army. Yun Songlong's left hand trembled even more violently. Children of military families were military families. Zhou state's laws had a certain degree of protection for the wives, daughters, and children of active military personnel. If anyone harmed a military family, the crime would be doubled. Hearing Oriole's words, the guards also had some misgivings. What are you spacing out for? Grab her. Why would a military family member of the Yun family sing in a restaurant? In the private room, not only were the debauches not frightened, they became even more aggressive. If it was 10 years ago, the Yun family army would be considered a famous army in Zhou State. But now, it was different. The Yun family army had long since declined. When the guards heard this, they became even more unscrupulous. Like eagles pouncing on chicks, they grabbed Oriole's hair and dragged her upstairs. Tears streamed down Oriole's face. She already had the intention to die in her heart. She knew that her chastity had been insulted today, so she might as well die. She clenched her teeth and was about to bite her tongue to commit suicide. Let her go. Yun Songlong was angry, and he suddenly stood up. Although Yun Songlong was disabled, the murderous aura he had honed on the battlefield in his early years was like an unsheathed sword. With an angry roar, the entire restaurant shook as if it had been struck by lightning. The few guards who were dragging the Oriole only felt the dou qi in their bodies stop. It was as though they had been punched in the chest by someone. They abruptly withdrew their hands. Within the private room, the wave of laughter also instantly quieted down. Where did these blind people come from? How dare they interfere with this young master's business? A burst of anger could be heard from the private room as a group of young martial practitioners wearing luxurious clothes walked down. When Yun Sheng saw this, her throat itched and she couldn't help but cough. This time, it really was a case of the flood rushing against the Dragon King's temple. They didn't recognize their own family. Among the luxuriously dressed martial practitioners, one of them looked very familiar. Wasn't that Yun Songlong's good nephew, Tang Yu? Chapter 216. Just as Yun Sheng was lighting a candle for Tang Yu in her heart, Tang Yu still didn't realize that he had caused a huge disaster. After not seeing him for more than a year, not only did Tang Yu not improve, he had become even more mischievous. He was originally studying at Wushuan Limitless School. At that time, he had borrowed Yun Songlong's relationship and combat strength had given him face to let him go. However, who knew that this brat would be beaten down by triple training in the morning, afternoon and night after entering the martial arts school for a few months. His mother, Yun Songxue, felt sorry for her son and begged combat strength to find an easier training for her son. Combat strength hated this kind of backdoor behavior the most and simply persuaded Tang Yu to leave. Yun Songxue had no choice but to send Tang Yu to the Marquis of Jiyuan's residence to learn martial arts with a few of his sons. After Tang Yu arrived, not only did he not learn his lesson, he even skipped classes and fooled around with the relatives of the Marquis of Jiyuan. After failing to loiter around the brothels of the Jade Capital, he even forcefully snatched women in restaurants. Today, he was drunk in the restaurant when he suddenly heard sweet singing coming from downstairs. The hedonistic sons at the side were coaxing together and had the idea of grabbing the singer upstairs, who knew that the Oriole was someone who refused to submit to power. She reported her identity, and when he found out that she was a soldier's wife, Tang Yu was shocked. However, he thought about it again. The Yun family army was a group of servants raised by his Yun residents. All these years, second uncle didn't leave the house, and the Yun family army's salary was all arranged by his mother, Yun Songshue. Regardless of whether the Oriole was really a soldier's wife or not. Even if she was, Tang Yu wasn't worried that she would really cause any trouble. A low-class soldier's wife who relied on the Yun family's salary to survive was at best worse than a beast. Since young Master Tang had taken a fancy to her, the Oriole should feel honored. When Tang Yu came out, he didn't pay attention to Yun Songlong. Today, Yun Songlong had changed his clothes and shaved his beard when he went out. He was completely different from the second uncle that Tang Yu remembered seeing in the Yun residence, so Tang Yu naturally couldn't recognize him. Tang Yu's perverted heart never changed. When he took a closer look, he saw the Oriole crawling on the ground with her face covered in rain. Her hair was messy, which made her palm-sized face even more alluring. Tang Yu only felt an unbearable itch in his heart. With a mischievous smile, he reached out to touch the Oriole's face. "What are you crying for, little beauty? Didn't you just say that you're a soldier's wife? That's great. Do you know who I am? I'm the young master of the Yun residence, Tang Yu. Your father is a subordinate of my grandfather and second uncle. You just happen to be here to serve this young master." Tang Yu's words made the Oriole even more embarrassed and angry. She did not expect that the one who caused her to end up in such a miserable state was the young master of the Marshal Saint General's residence. The guests in the restaurant were also shaking their heads. The Marshal Saint General's manner was unfortunate. In the third generation, not only did they not have a successor, their only grandson, Tang Yu, was actually such a bastard. The reputation of the Marshal Saint General's residence was completely lost by him. Tang Yu. What a good Tang Yu. What a good son Yun Songshue raised. Yun Songlong was also unbearably angry. If it wasn't for the fact that he could not move his hands, with his previous temper, regardless of whether Tang Yu was his nephew or not, Tang Yu would definitely have died with a single slap. "How dare you? Who are you to insult my mother?" Tang Yu's eyes were wide open as he glanced at Yun Songlong. Only with this glance did he recognize the person. Tang Yu's calf cramped, and he was so frightened that he almost fell to the ground. He stammered, Second uncle. Second uncle." This earth-shattering sentence caused Huang Kei'er to stop crying. The customers who were watching the show were all astonished. Tang Yu's second uncle was the Marshal Saint General's residence's Yun Songlong? "Young General Yun, are you the young General Yun that father often talks about?" The Oriole looked as if she had seen her savior and knelt in front of Yun Songlong. "Good child, quickly get up. Your father is my battalion commander, and I didn't recognize you just now. However, as a soldier's family member and the Yun family army has always enjoyed the Yun residence's salary, how did you fall to the point where you have to go out to sing?" Hearing Yun Songlong ask about the Yun family army, Tang Yu, who was frightened into a ball, couldn't help but reveal a trace of panic. Yun Sheng noticed this. It seemed that during the period when Yun Songlong was seriously ill, something must have happened to the Yun family army. "General Yun, you don't know, but the Yun family army hasn't given out any salary for many years. After my father returned from the battlefield, in the first few years, he could still get some salary from the Yun family army. However, starting from 3 years ago, the Yun residence stopped everyone's salary. There were also a few brave soldiers who went to the Yun residence to ask for their salary, but they were all chased out by the Yun residence's guards." Seeing Yun Songlong, the Oriole had the guts to spit out all the bitter water that had happened to the Yun family army all these years. There were many other Yun family army soldiers who had encountered the same situation as her. Because these people were the Yun residence's private army, after leaving the national army, they were unwilling to take up other jobs. Huang Kei'er's father was very unfortunate. He was injured on the battlefield and had been living in poverty all these years, muddling along. Huang Kei'er had also heard that singing in the city's restaurants could earn money, so she came here to sing. Who knew that on the first day she came here, she would be teased by Tang Yu and the others. When Tang Yu saw this, she secretly wanted to slip away. However, who knew that Yun Sheng, who had been silent all this time, would mock her? "Young Master Tang, where are you going? Are you going home to complain to your mother?" Tang Yu was so angry that she almost fainted. However, Yun Songlong's thick eyebrows raised. "Tang Yu, come here. Yun Songlong wasn't completely unaware that Yun Songshue was cultivating her own power in the Yun residence. However, due to his terrible illness, the entire Yun residence was taken care of by his sister alone. He felt guilty and didn't pursue the matter. However, today's matter had touched his bottom line. There were more than 1,000 people in the Yun family army, and all of them were good brothers who had followed him through life and death. Yun Songshue could touch anyone but the Yun family army. Tang Yu was still very fearful of this second uncle of his. His group of playmates had already dispersed in a hubbub. Although there were guards present in the Yun residence, who would dare to make a move in front of Yun Songlong? Seeing that there was no way to escape, Tang Yu could only timidly walk over. Kneel down and apologize to Miss Wang Ke, Yun Songlong said bitterly. He had occasionally gone out today and encountered the matter of the Oriole, who knew how many innocent commoners and girls had been defiled by Tang Yu. His father had no time to care about the matters in the Yun residence all these years, which was why Tang Yu had developed such a character. When Huang Ke heard this, she jumped in fright and hurriedly shook her head. General Yun, Huang Ke cannot accept this. I only beg young Master Tang not to bully other girls in the future. That's right, second uncle. Her father is only one of your subordinates. What right does he have to make me kneel down and apologize? Not only did Tang Yu not have any intention of repentance, he even continued to act like a young master. Seeing this, Yun Songlong's face darkened. Tang Yu, come here. Tang Yu walked over without understanding. Just as he approached, he suddenly felt a sharp pain in his knees, as if someone had interrupted him. With a plop, he knelt on the ground. It was Yun Songlong who had abruptly kicked him. Although he had lost his Do Chi, his battle skills were still there. This kick and retraction seemed to carry the power of wind and thunder. With one kick, Tang Yu's knees were actually forcefully dislocated, the sound of bones cracking clearly audible. User points, Destiny, Azure, Susu, and Chu Yu's rewards have been up for more than a month. Fortunately, there are still people looking. As long as there are people looking, I will persevere. Chapter 217. The sound of bones breaking entered the ears of everyone present. Even Yun Shang felt her eyelids twitch. TSK, TSK, TSK. As expected of the former number 1 general of Zhou State, a ruthless character on the battlefield. His actions were both ruthless and fast. Yun Shang secretly exclaimed, "Well done." The knees were one of the most important vital parts of the human body. Having the knees broken while they were still alive was like being bitten by thousands of ants. The pain was unimaginable. Tang Yu had completely sobered up by now. Only now did he know that second uncle was truly angry today. Second uncle, have mercy. Tang Yu was pampered and pampered in the Yun residence. His entire body was in pain as he hugged his knees and rolled on the ground. Second master, please have mercy. The guards were also anxious and hurriedly stepped forward to stop him. Scram! Whoever dares to stop me from teaching this little bastard a lesson today will be dealt with according to military law. Yun Songlong's aura was completely exposed. Between his brows, there was a faint, thunderous aura of the former young general. Yun Shang watched from the side and nodded repeatedly. With Tang Yu's temperament, if he wasn't properly disciplined, the Yun residence would definitely be turned into a mess by him in the future. Yun Songlong taught him a good lesson. In the private room, Yi Baiming, Cheng Bai, and Bu Jiuxiao also nodded. The three of them had the same expression. With Yun Songlong's appearance today, it seemed that the Yun family was going to change. Tang Yu wailed on the ground, but Yun Songlong was indifferent. Second uncle, on account of the fact that I'm the only grandchild in the residence of Yun, please let me go. I'm the only descendant left of my mother's bloodline, Tang Yu pleaded recklessly. He thought that if the Yun residence had no successor, Yun Songlong wouldn't really do anything to him. Tang Yu, if you don't apologize today, don't mention your mother. Even if your grandfather came personally, I would still beat him up. If it was in the military camp, a piece of trash like you wouldn't be enough even if you died 10 times. Yun Songlong couldn't help but sigh. The Yun residence was unfortunate to have a descendant like Tang Yu. If Big Brother was still alive, His children would definitely be hundreds or thousands of times stronger than this little rascal. Little Yin, I'll have to trouble you to help me tie up this brat and transport him to the Yun family army's encampment. I'll bring him to apologize to my old comrades. Yun Songlong wanted to go to the encampment today to see clearly what exactly Yun Songxue had done to the Yun family army all these years behind his back. Yun Sheng nodded. She waved her magic scepter, and several light blue water ropes spontaneously formed. They were like nimble vines, binding Tang Yu tightly. Yun Sheng was annoyed by Tang Yu's incessant yelling, so she simply used a ball of water vapor to block his mouth. She then used a levitation spell to lift Tang Yu's rather large body up. Wait! A group of guards rushed in from the entrance of the restaurant. They were all guards from the residence of Yun. Yun Songxue was like a moon surrounded by a myriad of stars as he walked out in fury. It turned out that when the residents of Yun's guards saw that Tang Yu had been captured, they were afraid that Yun Songlong would really hurt Tang Yu in a fit of rage. Thus, they secretly sent someone back to the general's estate to report. When Yun Songxue heard that her beloved son was beaten by her brother in public because of a lowly singer, the rage in her heart soared. She immediately ordered a dozen guards to rush over. Mother's darling, what happened to you? Yun Songxue took a closer look. Tang Yu's legs were hanging weakly on the ground, and his face was deathly pale from the pain. Her heart ached, and she was extremely angry at her second brother for being so heavy-handed. She cried as she pounced forward and hugged Tang Yu. However, Tang Yu's mouth was covered with a ball of water vapor and he couldn't speak. Yun Songxue was even more furious. Who is it? How dare you treat my son like this? It's me. Yun Sheng also didn't expect that Yun Songxue would disregard the Yun resident's face and directly bring a group of guards here. No wonder Tang Yu had developed such a personality. It was directly related to Yun Songxue, his mother. It's you again, you little slut. See how I'll deal with you later. Yun Songxue fiercely glared at Yun Sheng, then glanced at the black-faced Yun Songlong. Second brother, is your nephew. He did something wrong, so you only need to bring him back to the residence. Songxue will discipline him. However, if you directly break his knees, it will affect his future martial arts training. What will you do then? Yun Songxue knew that her second brother had a fiery temper. She didn't want today's matter to reach her father, Yun Ba. Third sister, you don't need to say anymore. I'll wait for Tang Yu to return to the Yun family's encampment. There will be military law as to how he should be punished. Yun Songlong was unmoved. Second brother, don't force me. Yun Songxue was anxious to protect her son. Seeing that Yun Songlong was still unmoved, she also pulled a long face and slowly stood up. With just a glance, the dozens of guards beside her immediately moved and surrounded Yun Songlong and Yun Sheng. All these years, Yun Songxue had been in charge of the Yun family, and she had nurtured a group of loyal soldiers. Although Yun Songlong was the male heir of the Yun family, the guards all knew that his hands were crippled and his body was crippled. He didn't have the slightest bit of life left in his body. A person like this could never inherit the Yun family's business. On the other hand, third Miss Yun Songxue had little young Master Tang Yu and would definitely inherit the Yun family in the future. Since that was the case, they naturally had to listen to Yun Songxue's orders. Yun Songxue had also been forced into a corner. She knew that her father and second brother were stubborn. She knew very well that in a place like the Yun family's encampment, Tang Yu had done so many shameful things over the years. If they really wanted to punish him according to military law, Tang Yu's little life would be lost. Yun Songlong's face also darkened slightly. He could see that Yun Songxue was going to shed all pretense of cordiality today. Yun Songxue was a fierce woman from a family of generals. Although her doqi couldn't be compared to her father Yun Ba and second brother Yun Songlong, she had also learned martial arts from a young age. Her martial skills had been taught by Yun Ba, and she was now a martial honorable. If Yun Songlong still had his doqi, he naturally wouldn't need to fear Yun Songxue and the guards. However, his hands were crippled and his doqi was suppressed. If they really fought, he would definitely not be a match for them. Moreover, the restaurant was chaotic and he still had Yun Sheng and Oriole, two weak women, by his side. Yun Shang was a sorcerer and Yun Songlong didn't know what her cultivation was like. However, if they really fought, she would definitely be at a disadvantage. Yun Songlong's misgivings were exactly what Yun Songxue had noticed the moment they entered the restaurant. That damned sorceress. If it weren't for her, why would Yun Songlong have a conflict with her? And that seductive singer, what military wife? Wasn't she just a little fox? Yun Songlong glared at Yun Shang with hatred. Men, tie up those two little hooves first. At her command, the Yun residence's guards pounced on Yun Shang and Oriole like hungry wolves. Yun Shang frowned and secretly sighed. Yun Songxue, there's a path to heaven, but you don't want to take it. There's no door to hell, but you insist on barging in. Since you've beaten up the little one, you can beat up the big one as well. Chapter 218. The Yun siblings faced each other. Seeing that the situation wasn't right, the owner of the restaurant hurriedly closed the door and the customers dispersed. Only the private rooms upstairs remained silent. The owner couldn't care less and hid under the counter with a few waiters. Take. Yun Songxue shouted angrily, but only finished half of her sentence. She hadn't even finished releasing her fighting aura when she felt the ground beneath her feet tremble. Yun Songxue's instinct as a warrior told her that there was something abnormal underground. She looked at the female mage again and saw that she had already raised her magic scepter. She actually activated magic so quickly? With a bang, the floor tiles of the restaurant were overturned and several streaks of water vapor shot out from the ground. The water vapor quickly condensed together and twisted, finally forming a blue anaconda. Yun Songlong was shocked. He saw Yun Shang raise her magic scepter and move her red lips. Dense water element magic was emitted from the anaconda's body. Under its empty gaze, the guards of the Marshal Saint General's residence were nothing. It curled up in the air and flicked its light blue tongue. The anaconda was as thick as a wooden barrel and had a mouth like a basin. It roared and swept its tail, firmly entangling the guards of the Marshal Saint General's residence. Mid-level magic, water-binding transformation, anaconda. The strength of the anaconda was at least 250 kilograms. The enormous water element magic instantly crushed the sternum of the guards. They were in so much pain that they wished they were dead and kept begging for mercy. Damn it, this female magician's strength is actually so strong. To be able to form a mimicry of mid-level water magic like the anaconda in the blink of an eye, her strength was at least that of an archmage. At this moment, Yun Songxue already knew that things weren't going well. She leaped high and aimed at the Oriole not far away. As long as she caught the Oriole, she wouldn't be afraid that she wouldn't yield. Yun Songxue had underestimated Yun Shang. How could she not know Yun Songxue's intention? She wanted to use the weakness of the Oriole to threaten her. That water python with its head held high suddenly moved. Its enormous body was like a water rainbow as it swiftly attacked the place where Yun Songxue had landed. Under the circumstances, Yun Songxue also revealed her solid foundation as a martial artist. She took a few steps in midair and actually changed her landing trajectory in midair. She abruptly changed her trajectory and landed in the empty space where the anaconda was attacking. The anaconda was extremely ferocious. With a loud bang, a large hole was drilled into the floor of the restaurant. The Oriole, who was a few meters away from the anaconda, screamed. If it had been half a second later, the falling rocks would have definitely made the Oriole bleed. In a moment of desperation, Yun Shang's gaze fell between the water python and Yun Songxue. Yun Songxue turned back halfway. Although she was lucky enough to avoid the anaconda, she did not gain much of an advantage. She staggered and landed on the ground. The guards at the side wanted to go up and help her, but she stopped them with a fierce voice. Yun Shang had to do two things in an instant. First, she had to urge the anaconda to attack Yun Songxue. Second, she had to go and save Huang Ke. However, she was only one person. If she did two things at the same time, she would definitely reveal a gap. In this situation, if it were anyone else, they would definitely be flustered. However, at this moment, Yun Shang revealed the strong will and sharp reflexes that she had honed on the operating table as a doctor in her previous life. She did not retreat, nor did she give way. The bone-bewitching scepter in her hand drew a dazzling arc in the air as she chanted softly. On her magic scepter, the two magic soul stones and the imprint of the wind fairy lit up at the same time. The anaconda that had burrowed into the ground let out a loud splash. A ripple appeared on its body that was as thick as a wooden bucket. That ripple split from its head and extended all the way to its tail. That scene looked very terrifying. Suddenly, the anaconda split into two. One anaconda attacked Yun Sangxue, while the other anaconda coiled around Huang Kei'er. The falling rocks were blocked by the thick water vapor from the anaconda and did not hurt Huang Quebec Yun Sangxue, and the rest were also caught off guard by the attack. In the private room, Yi Baiming's silver eyes suddenly shrank. He praised in his heart, "What a cool spell." A mere mimicry anaconda was not surprising. Yi Baiming could also see that the anaconda was not mature yet. It was obvious that the female magic caster had not comprehended a mid-level spell for long. However, it was precisely this kind of immature and even somewhat inexperienced magic that was able to make the astonishing transformation of splitting the snake into two under the critical situation. This was something that no one had expected. That female magic caster's control over her spell was very outstanding. The two anacondas were exactly the same size, and the magical waves were also almost the same. This also showed that the person who cast the spell had a very strict control over the magical elements. Yi Baiming finally understood the meaning of Cheng Bai's words earlier. This lass from the Royal Magic Academy indeed made people gain something every time they saw her. Sangxue, stop. When are you going to stop? In a rage, Yun Songlong's body moved like a phantom, passing by the anaconda and the guards. He raised his left hand and slapped Yun Sangxue furiously. Yun Sangxue was stunned. The guards present were also dumbfounded. General Yun's hand. Even Yun Songlong himself was stunned by this slap. He looked at his hand in disbelief. At this moment, the sound of horse hooves could be heard from outside the restaurant. The old general of the Martial Saint realm had arrived. There were many people in the restaurant, and the news of Yun Songlong's appearance in the restaurant spread out in less than 15 minutes. Almost at the same time, a few spies secretly brought the news of Yun Songlong to a few places in the Jade capital. In the Medicine Imperial Pavilion, Yao Rong also received the news. What? You said that you saw Yun Songhai in the Jade House, and his hysteria was cured? Yun Songlong's illness was a sore point for the Medicine Imperial Pavilion. His hysteria was not cured for many years, and the outside world said that the Medicine Imperial Pavilion was unable to cure him. But now, Yun Songlong had recovered, and no one knew who had cured his illness. Send someone to inquire about it. You must find out exactly who has been entering and exiting the Martial Saint General's mansion during this period of time. Yao Rong was not a narrow-minded person. She only wanted to find the genius doctor who had cured Yun Songlong. If that person could join the Medicine Imperial Pavilion, that would be the best. But if that divine doctor was not willing to join, then she could personally go and exchange pointers with the divine doctor. Just as Yao Rong sent someone to find out about the Martial Saint General's manor, a spy in the Marquis of Jiayuan's manor reported Yun Songlong's appearance in the restaurant in the Jade capital to the Marquis of Jiayuan. When the Marquis of Jiayuan received this news, his expression was strange. He looked a little emotional, but also a little worried. After thinking for a moment, he ordered someone to send over a brush, ink, paper, and inkstone. He immediately wrote a letter and handed it over to his personal guard. Send someone to deliver this letter to that person. Tell him that Yun Songlong's illness has been cured. Chapter 219. After learning that his two children had fought in the restaurant, Yunba rushed into the restaurant like an enraged lion. Inside the restaurant, the tables, chairs, and floor were all smashed to pieces. Yun Sangxue was drenched in water, and her hair was disheveled. She stood in a daze, her cheeks puffed up as if a steamed bun had been stuffed into her mouth. Yun Songlong stood there in a daze with a vexed expression. When he saw Yun Songlong's hand, Yunba was overjoyed. Songlong could move his hand, but then he saw the frightened Oriole and indifferent Yun Sheng. This female magician again? Why did he run into her everywhere? The floor of the restaurant was filled with traces of magic being used, and the floor was littered with Yun family guards. This made Yunba feel even more upset. In Yunba's mind, if the Yun family made a mistake, even if they had to be punished, it was their own business. Yun Songlong teaching Yun Songshue a lesson was a family matter. But that female magician was an outsider. She had hurt Yun Songshue and her son. That was unacceptable. Father, second brother hit me. He even wanted to kill you. Yun Songshue seemed to have been beaten silly by Yun Songlong. She cried when she saw Yunba. She pulled over Tang Yu, whose knees were broken, and knelt in front of Yunba, sobbing. She understood her father the best. Ever since her eldest brother, Yun Songhai, left the residence, the Yun family's bloodline had become her father's top priority. Because her second brother was crippled, he refused to marry and have children. Although her Yu-er was a disappointment, he had become the Yun family's only hope to continue the family's bloodline. Songshue sighed. Yunba had a strong personality and was the most protective. When he saw the miserable state of the mother and son pair, his earlier dissatisfaction with the mother and son disappeared by 70 to 80%. He had heard about today's matter from his spies on the way here. The source of the truth was indeed Tang Yu's disappointment. Among his 3 children, the most carefree one was Yun Songhai. Yun Songshue was unruly and headstrong. His second son, Yun Songlong, was more reserved. However, among the 3 of them, Yun Songlong was the most loyal. Today, Tang Yu had almost insulted the family of the Yun family army. If Tang Yu didn't give a proper apology, Yun Songlong would really punish her according to military law. But even if they failed to live up to expectations, Yun Songlong and his mother were still part of the Yun family. Songlong, Songshue owes you an explanation for what happened to the Yun family army. However, these are all family matters, and there is no need to use military law. You've already fought and broken Yuer's knees. Let's just let this matter pass. As for you, Yunba's words suddenly changed as he glared at Yunshang. Little girl, you hit my daughter and injured my guards. If I, Yunba, don't get justice today, I'm afraid that my Marshal Saint General's estate will not be able to establish itself in Zhou State in the future. Yunba's words were filled with killing intent. No matter how well the news of the incident at the restaurant was kept under wraps, it was bound to spread throughout the entire capital. Tomorrow at the imperial court, Elder Chen and the other civil officials would definitely use Yunba's lack of discipline as an excuse to file a complaint. Since that was the case, Yunba had to find a scapegoat for today's incident, and the most suitable candidate was Yunsheng. Yunsheng smiled mockingly as she couldn't help but feel a chill in her heart. Father, Yen-er is my savior. It can be said that my hand was healed by her. In order to protect Songshue and her son, you took your anger out on Yen-er. I will be the first to disagree with this. Yun Songlong didn't expect his father to push all the blame onto Yunsheng. Father, was he muddle-headed? Yun Songshue and her son were overjoyed. Once Yunba made a move, that annoying female magician would definitely die. This old man hasn't finished speaking. Although you injured Songshue and her son, you are indeed my Yun estate's great benefactor. This old man is extremely grateful that you saved my second son's hand. Yunba bowed slightly towards Yunsheng. Yunba's actions startled everyone in the restaurant. Yunba was the martial saint of Zhou State and a first-rank official. The previous emperor had specially bestowed upon him the honor of not having to bow when meeting the emperor of Zhou State due to his meritorious service. His bow to Yunsheng was an honor that even the imperial capital of Zhou State didn't enjoy. Yunsheng was more than shocked. Yunba was her grandfather in terms of seniority. How could she accept this bow? She decisively dodged to the side and pushed the aureole out. Old general, I can't accept this bow. It's right and proper for a doctor to treat others. If the residents of Yun really owe someone something, then you owe the Yun family soldiers and their families. Yunba had already investigated the situation of the Yun family army. Yun Songshue had indeed withheld the Yun family army's salary. In the past 5 years, the Yun estate had never paid a single cent to the Yun family army. Many of the soldiers' families had suffered from hunger and cold because of this. The entire military camp was now like scattered sand, with many people freezing and starving to death every year. No, the Oriole doesn't dare. The Oriole was so scared that her face drained of color when she saw the gray-haired Yunba. She knelt on the ground and kowtowed repeatedly. Although the Oriole has complained about the Yun estate, she has never hated old General's family. The Oriole's mother suffered a hemorrhage when she gave birth to the Oriole. It was only because young General Yun personally invited a doctor that the Oriole was able to survive. Father once said that the Huang family will be servants of the Yun estate for the rest of their lives. The Oriole's forehead hit the ground like a chick pecking at rice. Soon, her forehead was covered in blood. Seeing this, Yun Songlong felt even more guilty. Yun Ba's eyes were also gloomy. All parents in the world were pitiful. He had inverted right and wrong today. In order to protect Yun Songxue and her son, he had implicated the innocent. When had he ever felt good in his heart? Distinguishing between kindness and hatred is the teachings of the Yun estate's ancestors. What the Yun estate owes, this old man will definitely repay. However, what others owe the Yun estate, this old man will definitely take back. Little girl, seeing that you saved my son, this old man can spare your life. However, your sorcery cannot be kept. Yun Ba's words implied that he wanted to destroy Yun Shang's Dharma soul. Haha, but what if I refuse? Yun Shang's expression darkened, and her heart froze. This was her good grandfather. For the sake of a good-for-nothing descendant, he actually wanted to destroy her Dharma soul? Such a rude and unreasonable person. It was no wonder that her father, Yun Songhai, had left the general's estate in anger. This little girl really didn't know what was good for her. Under such circumstances, she still didn't beg for mercy. Yun Ba couldn't help but feel angry. He had already given Yun Shang a way out. He only destroyed her sorcery and wouldn't hurt her in the slightest. However, if she had begged, perhaps he would have been soft-hearted and show mercy. However, this little girl had a thorny temper. Once she opened her mouth, she didn't give him any leeway at all. This made Yunba even more embarrassed. You are truly young and ignorant. In front of this old man, what's the use of saying no? To prevent others from saying that this old man is bullying the young, I will use 10% of my power to fight with you. If you can withstand 3 moves from this old man will let you go. Yun Ba's gaze was piercingly cold as he stared sternly at Yun Shang. When Yun Songlong heard this, he was about to step forward but was stopped by a few secret guards of the Yun estate. It looked like she couldn't escape 3 moves from a martial saint. A faint trace of bitterness flashed through her heart. Yun Shang smiled bitterly and walked forward. Then, Old General, please show me your moves. Yun Shang held the magic scepter in her hand and bowed with cupped fists. Chapter 220. Hiss, Bu Jiuxiao and Chengbai both sucked in a breath of cold air. Was this girl crazy or stupid? Was she really going to exchange blows with Yunba? That was Yunba, the famous martial saint of Zhou State. Although Yunba had faded from the public eye over the years, the legends about him had never stopped in the great Zhou Empire. What kind of realm was the martial saint realm? To put it simply, if Yunba didn't like the Royal Magic Academy, he could raze it to the ground with a single combat technique. Yi Baiming frowned as he looked at Yun Shang. There was no trace of fear on her face. Yun Ba's anger was stuck in his throat. It was as if he was seeing his eldest son, Yun Songhai, many years ago, using the same tone to break off relations with him. Why was it that none of them had any leeway to turn things around? All right, watch carefully for the first move. Yunba hadn't fought with anyone in a long time. He didn't expect that this time, he would be fighting with a silly girl. Red-gold combat energy flowed on the surface of Yunba's body. After a series of crackling sounds like beans being fried, Yunba roared and a fierce burst of combat energy burst forth from his fist. The color of the combat energy was dazzling, just like the fireball that Yun Shang had released. However, the speed of the combat energy was several times faster than the fireball. Yun Shang had no time to dodge. Her body was thrown back with a bang and smashed into the wall. A 2 to 3 meter wide depression immediately appeared on the wall. Yun Shang fell to the ground, a trace of blood at the corner of her mouth. In the private room, Yi Biming felt a heavy blow to his chest. He felt a suffocating pain that instantly spread throughout his body. It was as if the one who had taken the blow wasn't Yun Shang, but himself. Why did he feel this way? Yi Biming couldn't help but feel suspicious. From the martial realm to the martial saint realm, battle techniques were usually only used at the very end. Yunba only needed to use the most basic moves, even if it was just a punch or a kick, to kill his opponent. His goal was very simple. He wanted to defeat Yun Shang quickly. With the physique of an ordinary mage, a single hit like this would be enough to shatter all the bones in her body, shatter all her meridians, and leave her bedridden for half a year. It was fucking painful. The old man's speed and strength were indeed astonishing. Yun Shang slowly stood up. She didn't even have the chance to recite a spell before she could do so. Little girl, you should just obediently let this old man cripple your Dharma soul. Yunba also sighed. From the Shin Nong medical bracelet, a stream of divine power quickly flowed out, desperately repairing Yun Shang's shattered bones. Of his entire body, only those 3 strange tendons were still intact. Yun Shang staggered and finally stood up straight. She licked the blood on her lips and squeezed out a smile that was uglier than crying. The second move, good. The second move. Yunba couldn't help but tremble. He hadn't been on the battlefield for many years. Who would have thought that today he would be so excited by a junior whose cultivation was so much lower than his own? Yun Shang was actually able to stand up after taking that move. This in itself was quite a big blow to Yunba. Yunba's body seemed to swell with fighting aura revolving around him. He suddenly stomped his foot. The strength of this stomp was like a magnitude 9 earthquake, and the entire floor of the restaurant exploded. This century-old restaurant had suffered a calamity today. The restaurant owner's eyes turned black, and he directly fainted. Yunba stomped his foot with a force of 10,000 kilograms. But the strange thing was, the floor of the restaurant didn't explode because of this stomp. The ground split into several pieces, and countless rocks rose from the ground. Each one was 3 meters long and 2 meters wide, and each one weighed over 200 kilograms. They were like countless earth spikes, like a stone prison, surrounding Yun Shang tightly. Everyone couldn't help but break out in cold sweat for Yun Shang. With her delicate body, how could she withstand several huge boulders that weighed 200 kilograms? Even if Yun Shang used earth magic, it would be very difficult for her to break through these huge rocks. The older the ginger, the spicier it was. Yunba had experienced countless battles in his life, from the battlefield to personal combat. The reason he was able to reach the martial saint realm today was definitely not because of simple hard work. He was very good at analyzing his opponents. From an army with thousands of soldiers and horses to a cultivator of the same level as him, Yunba could analyze his opponent's weakness in the shortest amount of time. Yun Shang was a fire and earth magic master, which meant that she could use earth and fire magic, and at least one of them was at the same level. But even if she used earth spikes, it would be impossible for her to shatter the huge rocks. Yunba couldn't help but feel a little proud. He laughed loudly and said, "Little girl, you'd better beg for mercy. Otherwise, you'll be trapped to death under these huge rocks." Just as Yunba was feeling proud, a dark shadow that was hard to see with the naked eye quickly climbed up the huge rocks. Yi Biming suddenly stood up. He leaned forward and looked at the huge rocks in disbelief. He could feel the soul in his body becoming restless. This feeling, it wasn't unfamiliar. It was as if he had found something that he had lost for a long time. The huge rocks trembled. Suddenly, there was a loud bang. Earth spikes that looked like the fangs of wild beasts instantly shattered the huge rocks with incredible strength and speed. The moment the huge rocks shattered, several flame bursts smashed towards Yunba like meteors. Yunba's face was filled with shock and astonishment. It looked very comical. How was this possible? What kind of earth spikes did she practice? They could actually shatter huge rocks that weighed thousands of kilograms in an instant. This was heaven-defying. Yunba naturally didn't know that ordinary earth spikes were able to shatter huge rocks that weighed thousands of kilograms. These were mid-level darkness spikes that Yun Shang had fused with the darkness thorns. With one stab, even the toughest ore could be pierced through instantly. When she pierced through the ore, She also instantly released several flame bursts. Courtesy was not reciprocated. It was definitely Yunsheng. However, Yunsheng had still underestimated Marshal Saint Yunba. Although the flame bursts were more than 10 times faster than fireballs, and their power was even more shocking, Yunba couldn't injure Yunba. However, how could Yunba be injured by a few mere flame explosions? A layer of pure gold battle chi floated on the surface of Yunba's body. His cheeks contracted as he forcefully inhaled a breath of air. Yunba inhaled and exhaled. The fighting aura in his chest was quickly compressed and spat out with a puff. That fighting aura was swift, fast, and sharp. In midair, it transformed into a fierce fighting aura tiger. Everyone said that magic was dazzling and battle techniques were simple. However, when one's fighting aura was trained to the extreme, it could also transform into a fierce beast like magic. The fierce tiger bent its 4 limbs on the ground. It looked like a fierce tiger descending from the mountain. The fighting aura tiger raised its head and roared. Facing the burning flame bursts, it was done in one move. Boom! The fighting aura tiger swallowed the flame bursts. Its eyes were filled with murderous intent. After swallowing the flame bursts, it pounced even more ferociously, aiming at Yunsheng. Its claws slashed down like an axe. Thank you Shui Run, Empty Lane of the City of Brisk, Yizi, and Yin Xiaoji for your tips. I won't say anything else. Tomorrow, the wildcat and the fox will reunite. On Monday, I'll make the ranking. Chapter 221. Not good. Yuan Ba's face drained of color as soon as the fierce tiger appeared. Just now, Yun Shang's attack had been extremely fast, and he had reacted almost instinctively. This fierce fighting aura tiger had reached 50% of his usual strength. The fierce tiger descends the mountain, crushing an army of 1,000. His original intention was to cripple that little girl's Dharma soul, not take her life. But it was already too late to stop him now. At this moment, Yunsheng also knew that she was doomed. She didn't expect that she would die at the hands of her own grandfather. In the midst of this crisis, a pair of angry gray eyes barged into Yunsheng's vision. She only felt a pair of strong hands around her waist. As the world spun, she saw Yi Baiming. He used his back to block that fatal blow for her. The smell of blood filled the air. The fierce fighting aura tiger's paw slashed down, forcibly tearing off a large piece of flesh from Yi Baiming's body. Little wild cat, we meet again. Yi Baiming's thin, blade-like lips curled up. His gray eyes were like stars that filled the sky. Why was he here? Yi Baiming's appearance suddenly changed the situation. Yunba immediately withdrew his fighting aura. He had come in a hurry and didn't expect that there would be someone else in the private room upstairs. Moreover, this person was Yi Baiming, the Northern Underworld King. Although Yi Baiming was the dethroned former crown prince, he was still a member of Zhou State's imperial family. Injuring him was a crime of disobedience. Even Yunba couldn't disregard this. Northern Underworld King, how could you? This is a matter between this old subject and the little girl. Your Highness has broken the rules by intervening halfway. Yunba's face was full of vexation. 3 moves had passed, but Yunba still hadn't defeated the little girl. According to their previous agreement, he had to let Yunsheng go. However, as the martial sage of Zhou State, it was already very impolite for him to teach a junior girl a lesson. If word got out that he couldn't defeat Yunsheng in 3 moves, he would lose all his face. Yi Baiming didn't look too good. That attack just now had been extraordinarily powerful. Fortunately, it had landed on him. If it had landed on the person in his arms, he was afraid that. There was no fear. From now on, as long as he was around, no one would be able to hurt the little wild cat. Seeing that Yunba was still pestering her endlessly, Yunsheng was also angered. Old General Yun, you keep saying that you want to get justice for Yun Sangxue and her son. Dare I ask, what is justice? Could it be that the so-called justice is because they are members of the Yun family? Yunsheng mocked. Her eyes faintly sparkled, but she felt that it was not worth it for her father and herself. Then what if I say that my surname is Yun and my name is Sheng, and my father is Yun Songhai? Yunba's tall body shook violently as if he had been struck by lightning. Yun Songlong and Yun Songxue were also shocked. Yun Yu stammered, "I remember now. You are that dirty girl." "That's right. It's me. 2 years ago, when my father was seriously ill, he told me that I still had family in the Jade Capital. I was full of hope and brought him to the Jade Capital, but who knew that I would be refused entry to the Martial Sage General's estate? Today, the Martial Saint General's estate humiliated me once again. I, Yun Sheng, swear that from today onwards, I will never take half a step into the General's estate." Yun Sheng's words were filled with anger and accusation. Her eyes were about to spit fire. In Yi Baiming's arms, the body trembling from anger made Yi Baiming's heart ache. She had gone through so much in these 2 years. It was no wonder that he couldn't recognize her. In Banana Leaf Village, that crafty and clever little wild girl had become calm and sharp. At that moment, Yi Baiming felt a kind of loneliness from her. That kind of loneliness made his heart ache. At that moment, he wanted to hug her tightly and comfort her. "Little wild cat, let's go home." Yi Baiming's heart ached, but at the same time, he rejoiced. If he hadn't felt the familiar fluctuation of the dark spiritual soul on Yun Sheng's body, he would have missed her. Home? Where was her home? After Yun Sheng's anger, she felt physically and mentally exhausted. Luckily, Yi Baiming was supporting her. The two of them walked out of the restaurant, leaving behind the dumbfounded Chengbai, Bu Jiuxiao, and the rest of the Yun family. "Haha, hello old General Yun. Hello General Yun. Congratulations to young General Yun for recovering your left hand. Congratulations to old General Yun for reuniting with your grandchild." Chengbai and Bu Jiuxiao hurriedly followed after Yi Baiming. Under the glares of the people of the residence of Yun, Chengbai spouted a bunch of nonsense. In his heart, he was cursing Yi Baiming. So what if his legs are long? He can run faster than a rabbit. He's a classic example of someone who only cares about the opposite sex. Are the two of you from the Wushuan Everlasting School? Today's matter involves the Yun family. I hope the two of you won't leak it out. The only one who was still somewhat clear-headed was Yun Songlong. "General Yun, don't worry. Today's matter, especially Divine Dr. Yan's background, we definitely won't leak it out. But we also have a presumptuous request. It's related to the Northern Nether King. Today, the Northern Nether King and we didn't appear in the restaurant." Bu Jiuxiao also politely returned the greeting. Yi Baiming was able to block Yun Ba's fatal attack. His strength, Yun Songlong immediately understood. He and Bu Jiuxiao nodded tacitly. Only then did Bu Jiuxiao pull away Chengbai, who was full of nonsense, and leave. Yun Songlong looked at his father with a pained expression. He should have realized it long ago. Little Yin was his eldest brother's daughter. Her temper, her appearance, her shocking talent for magic, and her special magic scepter all proved that she was his eldest brother's daughter. Finally, his eldest brother brought his daughter back, but they were rejected by his so-called family. "Father, third sister, I'm too disappointed in the two of you. Father," before eldest brother left, he said that you were stubborn. For the sake of the family's glory, you didn't hesitate to invert right and wrong. I even tried to explain it for you, but now it seems that it's true. Third sister, second brother doesn't object to you inheriting the family business. But if there comes a day when you disgrace the Yun family for your own selfish desires, I'll be the first to not let you off. After today, the Yun family army and I will leave the general's residence and have nothing to do with each other." Yun Songlong finished speaking and walked out with Huang Ke. When Yun Ba regained his senses, the restaurant was already empty. "My surname is Yun Songhai. My father is Yun Songhai." That's right, that child's temper was exactly the same as Songhai's when he was young. The way she used the magic scepter and the way she used magic was exactly the same as her father's. That was because she was his granddaughter. She also knew medicine and could cure a strange illness that even the great doctors of the Medicine Emperor's pavilion couldn't. The girl's eyes were filled with determination and disdain. She was Songhai's daughter, his own granddaughter. She had returned, but because of his ignorance and protectiveness, she was rejected at the door. In a day, Yunba experienced the reunion of his family, but also the abandonment of his loved ones. Just now, She said that Songhai was seriously ill? What happened to Songhai? What happened to his son, the one he was proud of, and the one who gave him the most headaches? Could it be that I was wrong? Yun Ba was on the verge of collapse. He closed his eyes in pain. Chapter 222. Yun Sheng supported Yi Baiming. Yun Sheng was petite while Yi Baiming was tall and handsome. In the afterglow of the setting sun, they appeared lofty yet harmonious. Yun Sheng also didn't expect that she would impulsively reunite with Yun Ba. She had always thought that the word impulsive did not apply to her. Feeling the burning gaze above her head, Yun Sheng's ears suddenly turned red. She pushed Yi Baiming away. This damned fox. Did he not have the slightest concept of propriety between men and women? He was like this when they were in Banana Leaf Village, and he was still like this even after reuniting after such a long time. Unexpectedly, just as Yun Sheng was about to push Yi Baiming away, she heard him cry out, "It hurts." Yi Baiming cried out, seeming to be in pain. "Did you pull on your wound?" Yun Sheng frowned. Yun Ba's tiger of fighting aura just now was very powerful. In order to save her, Yi Baiming was caught off guard and used his flesh and blood to block that attack. He was injured because of her. The two of them were still standing on the street, so it wasn't appropriate for her to check Yi Baiming's wound. After thinking about it, she could only support Yi Baiming and return to the martial arts center first. After returning to the martial arts center's medicinal hall, Yun Sheng took off Yi Baiming's clothes. Sure enough, there was a hideous wound on his back that was so deep that bone could be seen. It stretched across his entire back. Originally, with Yi Baiming's physique, a single wound wouldn't cause much harm to him. However, Yun Sheng saw many old wounds underneath that wound. With the addition of new wounds and old wounds, the situation wasn't so optimistic. "Who told you to jump out and save me without even saying anything? Do you think you're Lei Feng?" Yun Sheng wasn't in a good mood. She didn't like to owe people favors. Now that Yi Baiming had saved her, how was she supposed to repay him? What is a ***? Yi Baiming glanced at Yun Sheng from the corner of his eyes. When he narrowed his eyes, he looked like a lazy leopard. He raised his thick eyebrows and said, "You're a woman. You won't look good if you have a scar." His voice was deep and magnetic. Yun Sheng's heart skipped a beat when she heard his words. "It's my business whether I look good or not. Even if it's my business, it's only my business. In any case, I'll be the only one watching in the future." Yi Baiming's almost unreasonable words sounded very ambiguous when they came out of his mouth. Because of Yi Baiming's words, the temperature in the narrow pharmacy suddenly rose by a few degrees. It wasn't the first time that Yun Sheng had seen Yi Baiming take off his clothes, but compared to 2 years ago, Yi Baiming had completely grown into a man. His bronze skin had a metallic luster, his strong and firm muscles, and the new and old scars on his body all showed that he was no longer the reclusive youth from Jiaoye village. "What nonsense are you talking about? Turn around. I want to see your wounds." Yun Sheng only felt upset. Yi Baiming obediently turned around. Only Yun Sheng could make the dignified Lord Baiming as docile as a little lamb. "Why won't you acknowledge me?" When they were in the restaurant, even though Yun Sheng had only explained what had happened in the past 2 years in a few words, Yi Baiming could not help but feel heartache when he read between the lines. In the past 2 years, how did she, as a child, deal with the blow of her father being seriously ill and being kicked out of the Marshal St. General's residence? Although he already knew that the little wildcat was very strong-willed when he was in Jiaoye village. But she was just a child after all. Who knew that you were also in Yujing? What's more, you and I are neither relatives nor friends. Yun Sheng curled her lips. "I once said that as long as you heal my eyes, I will be your retainer." Yi Baiming suddenly turned around and grabbed Yun Sheng's hand that was applying medicine. His suddenly accelerated heartbeat passed through his skin to the deepest part of Yun Sheng's heart. Retainer? Is this kid joking? If Yun Sheng remembered correctly, retainers came from the Penglai state. In order to let the summoners grow better, every summoner would have a retainer. They were either powerful warriors or powerful magicians. They would protect the summoner for the rest of their lives. Yi Baiming said that he wanted to be her retainer. If he was still the young man in the Dharma temple, it would be feasible. But his identity was the dignified Lord Biming of Zhou State. You want to be my retainer? Did the Emperor of Zhou State agree? Don't forget that I am not the daughter of the Yun family. I am just an ordinary magician. Yun Sheng mocked herself. She had been in the Wuji land for several years and had some understanding of the Wuji land. Compared to the modern world, the Wuji land had a strong sense of hierarchy and class. When men and women married, they paid attention to matching social status, not to mention the royal family of Zhou State who had a noble bloodline. Today, she broke with Yun Ba, which meant that she had completely severed her relationship with the Yun family. Yi Biming wanting to be her retainer was a joke in her eyes. It has nothing to do with the Emperor of Zhou State. Yi Biming was very dissatisfied with Yun Shang's reaction. He, the Lord Biming, had been very popular in Zhou State ever since he regained his sight. He was willing to lower himself and be this woman's retainer. But her reaction just now was as disgusting as if she had eaten a fly. I don't agree. I have Xiaohei and Bobo. I don't need anyone's protection. Besides, you've saved me once today, so we're even now. Yun Shang was already a scepter summoner. She had already unlocked 3 mystic veins, and she even had the summoning demon hand. She could summon a domain-level Ant King that could destroy an entire city at any time. She didn't need any retainer. Little wild cat, the more you want to distance yourself from this prince, the more you can't. I want to be your retainer. Besides fulfilling my promise, there is another reason. It is because we must be together. Yi Biming saw Yun Shang's disdainful expression. He was angry, but he couldn't help but want to tease her. What do you mean? Yun Shang put some distance between Yi Biming and her vigilance. She was too close to this guy. The strong masculine scent on his body made her feel that her breathing and heartbeat were abnormal. In her previous life, Lu Minglang had brought her too much pain. In this life, she didn't want to experience that pain again. As a prince, Yi Biming would definitely be second only to one person. With his outstanding appearance and outstanding talent, he would definitely attract countless women. Yun Sheng wasn't willing. She didn't want to become one of his countless women. Because you stole my soul and my heart. Yi Biming curled his lips seductively, revealing a thought-provoking smile. He suddenly stretched out his long arm and pulled Yun Sheng into his embrace. She was different from the skinny little girl from before. The current Yun Sheng was different from before. Because of the jade marrow technique and the increase in her magic cultivation, her height and figure were completely different from before. Yi Biming immediately fell in love with this feeling when he held her in his arms. A wave of magic elements quickly seeped into Yun Sheng's body. Yun Sheng felt that her soul seemed to have been summoned by something and quickly became active. Ding! A sound was heard. It was like the sound of nature. The entire medicine hall was filled with a colorful light. Within the light, Yun Sheng's soul and Yi Biming's soul appeared at the same time. Chapter 223. At this moment, if someone were to barge into the medicine hall, they would definitely be shocked by the magical scene before them. Fortunately, when Yun Sheng returned, she had already warned the people in the medicine hall not to enter without permission. The current position of the two was extremely ambiguous. Yi Biming's clothes were half removed, and his arms were tightly wrapped around Yun Sheng's slender waist like iron bars. The 5-colored Dharma soul was like a rainbow, reflecting each other's splendor in the medicine hall. The Dharma soul in Yun Sheng's body was originally obtained from Yi Biming. Yi Biming's Dharma soul was the mother, and Yun Sheng's Dharma soul was the son. If Yun Sheng didn't use her magic, especially her dark Dharma soul, Yi Biming wouldn't be able to recognize Yun Sheng immediately. However, just now in the restaurant, Yun Sheng had activated the Dark Thorns and used her dark Dharma soul to break through Yun Ba's second attack. Yi Biming had immediately discovered Yun Sheng. In the entire world, only Yun Sheng's Dharma soul could guide Yi Biming's Dharma soul. After not seeing each other for 2 years, Yun Sheng and Yi Biming's 5-colored Dharma souls had improved to a certain extent. Yun Sheng originally thought that with her hard work and cultivation and various fortuitous encounters, she would definitely be able to catch up to Yi Biming's cultivation. However, now that she compared herself to him, She finally understood what it meant to be infuriated. Yi Baiming's five-colored Dharma soul was twice as big as her Dharma soul. At first glance, the two Dharma souls were as tall as the two of them. This was too unreasonable. Wasn't this kid a martial artist? She was a magician. Who would have thought that an amateur could improve faster than a professional? The most infuriating thing was that once Yunshang's Dharma soul saw Yi Baiming's Dharma soul, it seemed to have found its home and kept circling around Yi Baiming's Dharma soul. However, this wasn't the only thing that surprised Yunshang. After the two Dharma souls gathered together, their Dharma souls actually became a little bigger in an instant. What's going on? Yunshang was puzzled. Have you heard of dual cultivation? Yunshang's body was soft and fragrant. Yi Baiming couldn't help but have the urge to knead her into his bones. Dual cultivation? I've only heard of dual cultivation of magic and martial arts. Among the people that Yunshang knew, Feng Kuo was a dual cultivator of magic and martial arts. Yi Baiming was also a dual cultivator of magic and martial arts. However, Yi Baiming's cultivation speed was much faster than Feng Kuo's. Dual cultivation of magic and martial arts is for magicians who have multi-elemental Dharma souls. Due to their attributes, multi-elemental magicians don't have an innate advantage in terms of cultivation. Yi Baiming knocked on Yunshang's head. It seemed that the magic classes in the Royal Magic Academy weren't very good. The little wildcat actually didn't even know about dual cultivation of magic and martial arts, which was so important for multi-elemental magicians. Multi-elemental magicians were more talented than the average magician. They were outstanding in terms of learning and comprehending multi-elemental magic. However, after Yunshang joined the Royal Magic Academy, due to the needs of her Dharma soul, she also read a large number of ancient books and discovered a shocking fact. In the continent, in the past 200 years, the truly top-notch magicians, including the current Dharma Emperor, were all single-elemental or dual-elemental magicians. The specific reason for this was because of their Dharma souls. The more Dharma souls one had, the better the effect of absorbing the magical elements in the world. But correspondingly, multi-elemental magicians had to face another problem. That was the problem of how to allocate their time and energy. There was a limit to human resources. The more a magician learned, the more magical energy he would need to expend, and the more he would need to focus on a particular type of magic. This was especially true after comprehending mid-level magic and cultivating high-level magic and even more profound magic. This weakness would become even more prominent. Therefore, many magicians, even if they had multi-elemental Dharma souls, would give up on many types of magic when they learned high-level magic and focus on cultivating one type of magic. Take Yunshang, for example. Her mastery of fire, earth, and darkness was stronger than her mastery of magic in other areas. However, if two magicians were to engage in dual cultivation of magic and martial arts, they would be able to avoid this problem. Take you and me as an example. You and I both have 5 elemental Dharma souls. If we release our Dharma souls at the same time during our daily cultivation, we would be able to form a magical resonance in terms of our understanding of magic. This is the case with the 5-colored Dharma soul that you saw just now. Yi Baiming believed that with Yunshang's strong temper, she would definitely not reject dual cultivation of magic and martial arts that would speed up the progress of her magic. If the two of them cultivated together and caused their Dharma souls to resonate, they would be able to speed up their magic cultivation. Yunshang was skeptical, but after looking at the situation of their Dharma souls, she became more convinced. Not only can the Dharma souls speed up cultivation, there is another benefit to dual cultivation of magic and martial arts. It can help the two magicians to better comprehend magic. If the two magicians have no grudges, they can even comprehend dual cultivation magic that only the two of them can use. Yi Baiming knew that Yunshang was already walking into his trap step by step. Do we really just need to cultivate together? Yunshang was almost convinced by Yi Fuyan's words. Of course, if you want to progress faster, there is another method other than Dharma soul cultivation that is more effective than Dharma soul cultivation. Yi Baiming took advantage of the fact that Yunshang was listening attentively and simply half-hugged Yunshang and shifted her onto his strong thighs. Yunshang didn't notice that she was already sitting on Yi Baiming's thighs. The two of them looked like a pair of lovers who were passionately in love and whispering in each other's ears. Then what is the most effective method? Yunsheng hoped that she could make a breakthrough in her strength after being lectured by Yunba. Due to her identity as a doctor, she had less time to cultivate magic than the average person. If there was a more effective method of cultivation, she would definitely give it a try. You really want to try it? Yi Baiming's gaze was a little mischievous as he scanned her body. Finally, his gaze landed on Yunsheng's chest that had yet to fully develop. Little wild kitten, she was only 8 years old this year. Why couldn't she grow big? Yi Baiming was a little depressed. Due to the environment in the boundless land, men and women matured early. Usually, men were 14 or 15 years old, and women could get married at 13 or 14 years old. However, no matter how one looked at it, Yunsheng was still a long way from the age where she could get married. Yunsheng hadn't noticed Yi Baiming's gaze and was a little puzzled. What exactly is the method? You may not know, but on this continent, most of the multi-elemental magicians are husband and wife. Apart from the closeness of their Dharma souls, as long as they are husband and wife and see each other honestly, the effect of absorbing each other's magic power will be greatly increased. Yi Baiming couldn't help but tighten his grip on Yunsheng's hand. Although Little Wild Kitten had grown a lot compared to 2 years ago, some parts of her body were still too small. Become husband and wife and see each other honestly? Yunsheng was still a little confused. Suddenly, she noticed Yi Baiming's gaze. When she looked down, she realized that she was actually sitting intimately on Yi Baiming's lap. Yunsheng was angry. She raised her hand and pushed Yi Baiming's chest, breaking free from his embrace. Yi Baiming was in pain, but when he saw Yunsheng's cheeks puffed up in anger and embarrassment, he laughed heartily. Ahem. Right at this moment, an awkward cough was heard. Yun Songlong stood outside the door. He obviously didn't expect to see such a scene. His newly acknowledged niece and Lord Baiming, whose shirt was completely removed. This scene didn't seem right no matter how he looked at it. Chapter 224. That damned Yi Baiming. Now he wouldn't be able to clear his name even if he jumped into the Yellow River. When Yunsheng saw Yun Songlong, she understood that he must have come because of her background. Although she hated Yunba, she didn't have any prejudice against second Uncle Yun Songlong. Uncle Yun. Yunsheng threw a bottle of hemostatic medicine and clothes to Yi Baiming and said unhappily, "Treat your wounds yourself. It's getting late. Go back to your own place." Yi Baiming nodded at Yun Songlong, then left with a serious expression. When Yi Baiming returned to his residence, Bu Jiuxiao and Chengbai had already been waiting for a long time. Chengbai's eyes were sharp, and he immediately saw that under Yi Baiming's sexy ribs, there were a few red marks that looked like a woman's claws. Combined with the scene of Yi Baiming and Yunsheng leaving together, Chengbai immediately became interested and smiled mischievously. "You're finally back. Hurry up and confess. How did you meet that little godly doctor? I say, you brat, aren't you a little too fast? You've only known each other for a few days, and you're already hugging and scratching her. The situation is very intense." Chengbai's words were very explicit, and even Yi Baiming felt very awkward when he heard them. Bu Jiuxiao appeared much calmer. "Chengbai, don't make a fuss. Let Baiming explain. From the looks of it, it doesn't look like they just met." This was also the most strange thing about Bu Jiuxiao. Last time, when Yi Baiming saw Yunsheng, he was still indifferent. But this time, especially when the Yun family's girl was almost injured, Yi Baiming obviously couldn't sit still. He ignored the danger of exposing his true strength and forcibly took on Yunba's attack. The Yun family's girl was very important to him. Yi Baiming had grown up with them. When he was imprisoned in the cold palace, the only woman he knew, other than those in the palace, was Chun Lian-er. "I met her 2 years ago. She cured my eyes." Yi Baiming recalled the scene when the two first met, as well as the short but very warm days they spent in Jiaoye village. Yi Baiming's voice could not help but soften, and his eyes were filled with a rare gentleness. Chengbai and the others had known Yi Baiming for so many years, but this was the first time they had seen their good friend reveal such an expression. They immediately understood that Yi Baiming liked the girl from the Yun family. And from the looks of it, He seemed to like it very much. But her identity. If she returns to her family, maybe you can ask the Emperor of Zhou State to grant you a marriage. You two can be considered a match. But that girl is stubborn. You saw how she broke off relations with Yunba today. If she doesn't acknowledge Yunba, she will be a commoner. The imperial family cannot marry commoners. Chengbai was more concerned about the issue of matching social status. Perhaps in other people's eyes, Yi Baiming was only a dethroned crown prince. But Cheng and Bu knew very well that Yi Baiming would not just be an ordinary prince, especially when the crown prince of Zhou State was still a good-for-nothing. Yi Baiming's rise was only a matter of time. Whether she is a commoner or a direct descendant of the Yun family, I only know that she is the one I have set my mind on. But it is still too early to talk about marriage. This year, she is only 8 years old. How could a woman who had half of his soul be a mere commoner? Yi Baiming's confidence in Yun Sheng was self-evident from his words. At this time, in the medicine hall, Yun Sheng still did not know that she had been targeted by a certain fox. She invited Yun Songlong to sit down and poured him some tea. Both uncle and niece were silent. You are really my eldest brother's daughter? You said your name is Yun Sheng? Yun Songlong was excited as he carefully examined Yun Sheng. Second uncle. I should actually call you second uncle. Father often mentions you. Yun Sheng nodded. Then where is your father now? Why didn't he return to the Yun residence? Don't blame your grandfather. He is just stubborn. After he chased your father away, he did not leave his room for 3 days and did not eat or drink. Your father's courtyard has always been the same as it was back then. Yun Songlong also knew that Yun Sheng had a deep misunderstanding of the Yun residence. Second uncle, I don't blame anyone. Father left the Yun residence to protect mother. He never thought of returning to the Yun residence. It was because of me that he returned to the Jade capital. Father is currently unconscious. Yun Sheng's voice softened when she mentioned her father, Yun Songhai. She told Yun Songlong about the strange poison in Yun Songhai's body. Yun Songlong was extremely agitated when he found out that his beloved elder brother had become like this. What poison is it? Have you found someone to take a look at him? I know the great physician of the Medicine Emperor Pavilion. Why don't we bring him to take a look? After Yun Songlong spoke, he realized that he had said something wrong. He forgot that his niece was a godly doctor with medical skills. Furthermore, she was proficient in demonic medicine and ancient medical skills. She could even cure his PTSD. For a strange poison that even she was helpless against, even a great physician would not be able to cure it. This is something that Shang does not understand. When father was living in Banana Leaf Village, he was already poisoned. This proves that the poison was brought back from outside. Second uncle, do you know what kind of enemies father has? If we can find the person who poisoned him, it will be much easier to treat him. Yun Sheng did not want her father to remain unconscious. Your father is a forthright and righteous person. He doesn't have many enemies. On the other hand, your mother, Yun Sheng, don't blame me for smearing your mother's name. Although I don't know why your grandfather insisted on rejecting the marriage between your father and your mother, I vaguely know that your mother seems to have killed an important person from the Zhao state. When Yun Songhai and Yun Ba fell out, Yun Songlong was not in the Jade capital. When he found out that his elder brother had left home, he immediately rushed back without stopping. However, his elder brother had already left. He had asked Yun Songxue about it, but Yun Songxue was not willing to talk about it. Mother actually killed an important person from the Zhao state? What kind of important person was he? Could he be one of the top few people in the Zhao state? Yun Sheng did not know anything about her mother, Hu Jiusheng. However, from the situation of the puffed egg and the fact that she had defeated her father, she was probably more powerful than her father, Yun Songhai. Hearing this, Yun Sheng finally understood why her grandfather was so against her parents' marriage. The Zhao state was the holy temple of the summoners in the Wuji land. The top summoners of the land gathered there. Due to the scarcity of summoners, the branches of the Zhao state in the Zhao state did not have much power. However, this did not mean that the Zhao state could be underestimated. In fact, in Penglai, the Zhao state was said to be more powerful than the emperor. Some people even said that Peng Lai was actually controlled by the Zhao state. Yun Sheng's mother had a mysterious background. She was also a summoner. Since she had killed an important person from the Zhao state, she would be hunted down by the entire Zhao state. The House of Yun was deeply rooted in the Zhao state. However, compared to the unpredictable Zhao state, it was difficult to defend against them. It seemed that the poison in her father's body was related to the Zhao state. Thank you to Feng Qingquang, Empty Lane of Brisk City, Banksia, Yin Xiaoji, Mao Xiaoya, and Cheng Dongmei for their tips. Some girls asked why they had to pay for the books. This shouldn't happen. I am already very happy that everyone is supporting the original. Chapter 225. After the uncle and niece talked for a while, it was already time to light the lanterns. Yun Songlong also told Yun Sheng about his falling out with the Yun residents. After hearing this news, Yun Sheng was moved, but also felt a little guilty towards Yun Songlong. Second uncle, you didn't have to do this. To put it bluntly, the Yun residence's matter is only Shang's personal matter. You are the only child in the family. If you leave like this, I'm afraid that the Yun residence will be even more. Shang, you are both grandchildren of the Yun family, but you and that brat Tang, you are worlds apart. Actually, I know a little about the filthy things that third sister has done these years. However, due to my serious illness, I was unable to interfere in these matters. Yun Songlong's face was gloomy. He also felt guilty towards Yun Songxue. Both his father and he were not good at running a business. There was also no mistress in the residence, so Yun Songxue took care of everything by herself. This resulted in Yun Songxue's rude and unreasonable personality. When Yun Songlong sent the Oriole back to the Yun army, he realized that the Yun army's situation was much worse than he had imagined. He came to find Yun Sheng not only to ask about his big brother's situation, but also to ask Yun Sheng to treat the aftereffects of his old subordinates. He planned to reorganize the Yun army. Even if he left the Yun residence, he still had to plan for the livelihood and future of the thousands of people in the Yun army. Second uncle, don't worry. I will take care of the soldiers' physical and mental health. Tomorrow morning, I will go with you to the camp. Yun Sheng patted her chest and promised. However, the condition of your hand is a little special. I still need to examine it for a while. You have a good relationship with Deputy Curator Qi, so why don't you stay in the dojo first? Once your hand has fully recovered, you can move to the Yun army. Yun Songlong's hand injury was something that Yun Sheng couldn't understand. Earlier, when Yun Sheng examined his hand, she confirmed that his duki was sealed by a special method. He needed to wait until Yun Sheng's soul-healing divine needle broke through to the 5th level before she could help him circulate his blood and circulate his qi to open up the blocked meridians. In the previous few treatments, Yun Sheng only helped him to regain some feeling in his hand. It was not to the point where he could raise his hand or even slap someone. However, in the restaurant, Yun Songlong's hand was suddenly able to move. She had obviously investigated Yun Sheng's medical knowledge, so she planned to keep Yun Songlong by her side to observe the specific condition of Yun Songlong's hand. Yun Songlong had already informed his good friend, Combat Strength, that he would be settling down in the dojo for a while. In the next few days, Yun Sheng went to the Yun army as per the agreement between her and Yun Songlong. The Yun army's situation was worse than she had imagined. Other than a portion of the soldiers suffering from battle trauma, the Yun family had not looked after the Yun army for many years, so the soldiers' morale was lax and there was no discipline to speak of. Yun Sheng also met Oriole's father, a middle-aged soldier around 40 years old. At this age, he should be in the prime of his life. But Oriole's father was also a typical soldier suffering from battle trauma. He also couldn't afford to hire a superb doctor like De Guichot, so he could only let his condition worsen. Fortunately, he still had his family and Oriole's careful care, so he wasn't tortured to death. But even so, when Yun Sheng saw Oriole Huang, his complexion was still fine. It was just that his figure was a bit thin and weak, and his pair of cloudy eyes were empty. This was already much better than what Yun Sheng had expected. When Yun Sheng arrived at Oriole's house, Oriole was feeding her father some thin porridge. Godly Dr. Yun, you're here. Seeing Yun Sheng, Oriole hurriedly got up. She was a few years older than Yunsheng. Due to her family's decline, she had to go out to make a living early on. This also trained her character, which was both gentle and strong. She was a very considerate big sister. Oriole had already found out from Yunsheng that not only was Yunsheng a magician, she was also a very powerful doctor. She was full of admiration for Yunsheng. Hearing that Yunsheng was here to treat her father for free, Oriole was even more grateful. Your father's battle trauma will be better after a few more visits. His body is very weak due to malnutrition all year round. Here is some magical beast meat. Stew it and boil it into porridge. Other than giving it to your father, you should also eat some yourself. Yunsheng saw that Oriole was thin and gave her some magical beast meat, as well as a few gold coins. Because the name War Trauma Syndrome was too complicated for the people of the Boundless Continent, Yunsheng simply called it War Trauma Syndrome. Oriole refused for a while, but in the end, she refused the gold coins and kept the few pieces of magical beast meat. Young General Yun found a job for me in Wushuan Everlasting Hall to do laundry for people. I can earn 20 silver coins a month, which is enough to support my family. Oriole will definitely return the money for the magical beast meat to godly Dr. Yun in the future. Oriole felt that being able to meet Yun Songlong and Yunsheng was already the greatest blessing in her life. Before meeting them, she really thought that she would have to guard her sick father and starve family for the rest of her life. Seeing Oriole's insistence, Yunsheng also couldn't insist. On the hospital bed, Father Huang let out a series of indistinct cries. Godly Dr. Yun, you should rest for a while. It won't be too late to stay and eat before leaving. Father probably wants to hear me play the pipa again. Oriole nodded apologetically towards Yunsheng and took out her pipa. Oriole's pipa skills were not bad, but it was a pity that she was interrupted by Tang Yu's group of hedonistic sons last time. Yunsheng only heard about 70 to 80% of it. Now that she was fortunate to be able to listen to it again, Yunsheng also became interested and sat down to listen. Oriole tuned the instrument and plucked the strings. This time, she didn't sing, but only played the pipa. When Yunsheng heard it, she didn't play the soft little tune that she used to sing in the restaurant earlier. The strings moved, and the pipa's silver color was full and bright, sonorous and clanging. When the sound of the pipa rang out, Field Officer Huang's turbid eyes on the bed had an additional trace of light. And Yunsheng also felt that the jade marrow technique in her body had become active, as if it had encountered a violent storm. Yunsheng only felt that the jade marrow technique in her body had rapidly increased by a large amount. What was going on? Yunsheng hurriedly circulated her qi to regulate her breathing. She had never encountered such a situation before. The pipa music was like raindrops, from dense to dispersed, and gradually calmed down. When Oriole finished plucking the last note, her slender fingers pressed the pipa music. As the music lingered in the air, Yunsheng only felt that the restless jade marrow technique in her body had gradually calmed down. She felt that her jade marrow technique had improved a little. On the bed, Field Officer Huang had also fallen asleep peacefully. Yunsheng finally understood why Commandant Huang could still have a breath of life after so many years despite his illness. The reason was because of Oriole's pipa playing. Oriole, what was the name of the tune you played just now? Yunsheng stood up and asked. Chapter 226. Oriole's pipa song was completely different from the song she sang in the restaurant. This song had a strong ancient flavor and was completely different from the folk songs. The feeling of the song was more like a war song. Even Yunsheng, who didn't know much about music and could only dictate divine songs like Little Apple in the modern era, was filled with passion. According to the changes in her body's jade marrow art and magic soul, the reason why Yun Songlong's hand was able to take a turn for the better was because of Oriole's pipa song. Yunsheng was certain that while listening to the music, her magic power and jade marrow art could be said to have soared. Her magic power was at least at the peak of the Grand Magus realm, and her jade marrow art could reach the level of breaking through her fourth strange tendon. Is godly Dr. Yun talking about the song I played just now? I call it the Nameless Song. Yellow Sparrow was very embarrassed after being praised so much. Although Oriole was the daughter of a military general, due to her family circumstances, she lost the qualifications to study and practice martial arts early on. In her early years, she had helped some rich families with laundry and chores. One day, when she was washing clothes by the river, due to the unbearable cold and hunger, she fainted by the bone-chilling river. The winter was bitterly cold. Just as Oriole's body was frozen stiff and on the verge of death, she heard the sound of a zither. At that time, my hands and feet were frozen stiff. I could vaguely see someone playing a zither on the frozen river. That zither sound made one's blood boil, as if one had drunk a large mouthful of pepper. My hands and feet gradually regained feeling. Oriole recalled the past. After listening to the zither sound, Oriole felt that her entire body was filled with strength and she wasn't as cold anymore. By the time she wanted to see who was playing the zither, that person had already left. Oriole only had time to vaguely see a back view. Although it was only a back view, Oriole was certain that it was a woman. That was 4 or 5 years ago. The river where Oriole washed her clothes was called Moon Washing River. It was a river not far from the Yun Army's encampment. Usually, there weren't many people here. Because the river water was clear and sweet, it was also the Yun Army's main source of water. Oriole's perception was not bad. After listening to the zither song that time, she remembered most of it in her heart and copied it down when she returned home. Oriole's mother, who had passed away early, was a musician in a music workshop. When Oriole was young and her family was still well off, she had learned some basic musical skills from her mother. She composed her own music and played it. Over time, the Pipa song came to be. To the Oriole, today was the happiest day of her life. If it was in the past, she would never have dreamed that she could become a martial artist. If Yunsheng was a man, the Oriole would be willing to repay her with her body. This song was very likely related to whether Yunsheng could completely recover his hand. Yunsheng was also very interested, so she simply accepted it. After Yunsheng left the Huang family, she walked in the direction of the Moon Washing River that the Oriole had told her about. The Moon Washing River was located to the north of the Yun Army's encampment. It was surrounded by fertile water grass. In this season, the water grass grew lush green and one could smell the fragrance of the grass from afar. Normally, the shape of the Moon Washing River was like an eyebrow-shaped crescent moon. However, because it had rained a few days ago, the surface of the river was much wider. The crescent moon had become a full moon and the water was full. The watergrass and Artemisia selingensis in the surroundings were also very lush. Yunsheng walked along the river for a while, but she did not find anything suspicious or noteworthy. When she turned over the riverbank and was about to walk back, Yunsheng saw a lonely figure standing on the slope beside the river. That person's back was tall and his right arm was empty. He stood from afar, exuding the unique majesty of a soldier. He stood alone on the slope and looked at the gurgling moon-washing river. He was in a daze and did not even react when Yunsheng approached him. Even though it was just his back, Yunsheng recognized him at a glance. Second uncle? Yunsheng did not expect to see Yun Songlong here. Chapter 227. Hearing the movement behind him, Yun Songlong turned around. He obviously didn't expect to bump into his niece, Yunsheng, here. The moon-scouring river was secluded, and there weren't many people around. In the early years, only the Yun family army would come here to get water. After Yun Songlong went to the Yun family army's encampment for inspection today, he recalled some old things from the past and unknowingly came here. He didn't expect that Yunsheng would also come here because she heard the zither music. Yun Songlong's ears turned red like a guilty youth who had been caught red-handed doing something wrong. Sheng'er, why are you here? Yun Songlong's complexion was much better recently. He had already gone to see his elder brother, Yun Songhai, earlier. Seeing that although Yun Songhai was unconscious, everything was normal, he was relieved. Second uncle, you used to come here often. Have you met a mysterious woman here? Yunsheng pretended to be indifferent and carefully observed Yun Songlong's reaction. Sure enough, when Yunsheng asked about the mysterious woman, Yun Songlong's face showed a hint of astonishment. However, he quickly concealed this obvious astonishment and said indifferently, "This is the Yun family army's encampment. It's an important military area. How could there be a woman here?" He was still stubborn. An old man in his 30s staring blankly at the river. If he wasn't thinking about love, could it be that he wanted to jump into the river like Chu Yuan? Yun Sheng snorted in her heart. She had heard that Yun Songlong had always been unwilling to marry. On the surface, he said it was because of his hand disease and he didn't want to implicate others. However, who knew if there were other hidden reasons? It's fine if you don't know her. I just went to Yin Kei's house to see Officer Huang's illness. Yin Kei also gave me a zither piece. Second uncle, I remember that you are very proficient in music. Why don't you take a look at it for me? Yun Sheng had a good memory. She only took a glance at the piece and remembered it all. When Yun Songlong heard that it was a piece of music, he was somewhat interested and took a look. This is Shang-er. Yin Kei gave you this piece of music. Where did she get it from? A crack appeared on Yun Songlong's calm face. This was completely different from his usual good manners. He gripped the paper tightly with his left hand. The song was written down by the Oriole herself. A few years ago, when she was washing clothes by the river, she chanced upon an unfamiliar woman playing music here, so she wrote it down. After listening to this song, I discovered that this song is extraordinary. It can stir up the Do Qi and magic elements in a person's body. When Yun Sheng saw Yun Songhai's appearance, she knew that he must know the mysterious woman. She actually still remembers that promise. Yun Songlong's eyes began to heat up. It's said that men don't cry easily, but it's only when they are sad. This piece of music that Yun Sheng inadvertently got touched to regret that Yun Songlong had buried in his heart for many years. Second uncle, what are you regretting? Do you know this song? Yun Sheng struck while the iron was hot and asked Yun Songlong. This song is called the Dihong Song. It's the sacred song of the Dihong city and Xinyuan clan. It's a divine song that can only be learned by the direct bloodline of the Dihong clan. It's very beneficial to a person's cultivation. Legend has it that this battle song is divided into 9 chapters, and it has an extraordinary and shocking effect. Yun Songlong seemed to have made a huge decision before he decided to tell Yun Sheng. Could that mysterious woman by the river be the successor of the Dihong city? Yun Sheng had never seen the name Dihong in any ancient books. However, looking at Yun Songlong's expression, it wasn't hard to guess that it must be a hidden place. The boundless continent was vast and boundless. The 5 major countries and the eastern capital were only a small part of the forces that surfaced. There were many powerful ancient tribes that were hidden from the eyes of the world. However, it was also these hidden tribes or clans that secretly controlled the movements of the powerful countries in the continent for thousands of years. The Dihong clan was one of these tribes. They vaguely lived in a place called the Dihong city, and the Dihong and Xinyuan clans were connected to the Dihong clan for generations. The people of the Dihong city didn't often interact with the outside world. However, it was known that the Dihong city would send some direct descendants to travel the continent every few years. According to historical records, these people of the Dihong city were either powerful magicians or warriors with astonishing strength. Yun Songlong only said this about the Dihong city. As for how he got to know the people of the Dihong city and the identity of that mysterious woman, Yun Songlong wasn't willing to say anything more. Yun Songlong only said that he was lucky enough to gain the favor of a person of the Dihong city. That person passed on 3 chapters of the Dihong song to him without telling the people of the Dihong clan. The Dihong song was originally a battle song. When played by an ordinary person, it had the effect of promoting blood circulation and replenishing energy. However, if played with a combination of battle energy or mana, the effect would be even better. It was rumored that the ancestor of the Dihong clan had once used the Dihong song to expel an army of tens of thousands of magical beasts by himself and his zither. Of course, that was only a legend. Since the Dihong song had been passed down until now, there were very few people who could unleash the power of the ancestor of the Dihong clan. Yun Songlong also told Yun Sheng that the Dihong song could be played as long as it was played with a musical instrument. It wasn't limited to any musical instrument. It could be played with any musical instrument. Right now, I have no battle energy and have lost my right hand. I no longer have the chance to play the Dihong song. I can only pass on 3 chapters to you. You can try to comprehend it yourself. As for Huang Ke, you can also pass it on to her. However, you have to remind her not to easily demonstrate it in front of others. Yun Songlong still felt that he owed Huang Ke's family. The zither music that Huang Ke heard should only be the first chapter of the Dihong song. That child had only listened to it once and was able to use the weak battle energy in her body to play with such momentum. It was already very difficult. After Yun Shang received the 3 chapters of the zither music, she looked at them. They didn't seem to be any different from ordinary music. Yun Songlong also reminded Yun Sheng that not everyone could learn and comprehend the Dihong song. Yun Sheng only needed to try it out first. If she encountered any discomfort while playing, she had to immediately stop playing to prevent the zither music from entering her body and injuring her internal organs. The gains would not make up for the losses. Yun Sheng agreed to Yun Songlong's request. Yun Sheng didn't have high hopes for the Dihong song. She didn't know much about music theory. Although the Dihong song was very powerful and made people yearn for it, she didn't force herself to learn it. However, when she thought that the Dihong song might be beneficial for second Uncle Yun's hand injury, Yun Sheng decided to go to Yujing City to buy a musical instrument and see if she could find a suitable instrument to learn the Dihong song. After the uncle and niece finished talking about the past of the Dihong clan, the sky was already filled with multicolored light. The multicolored light reflected on the moon-washing river. It was like a multicolored gauze flowing into the distance amidst the hazy water vapor. Yun Songlong bathed in the multicolored light with a lonely expression on his face. It was only after Yun Sheng urged him a few times that he reluctantly left the moon-washing river. Chapter 228. The uncle and niece walked past the moon-washing river. Their surroundings were already bathed in the night. From the moon-washing river to the Jade Capital, there was still a long way to go. During this time, they also had to pass through a desolate graveyard. At night, the entire graveyard looked eerie. After Yun Sheng and Yun Songlong walked a few steps, they stopped at almost the same time. One of them had fought on the battlefield all year round, while the other had the Shinnong pupil, so his 5 senses were extraordinary. Second uncle, there's something in the graveyard. The thing Yun Sheng was talking about was naturally not something dirty. She could clearly hear 5 or 6 suppressed breathing sounds. There was an ambush in the graveyard. I'm afraid it's a bunch of thieves who rob passers-by. They don't have a strong killing intent on them. Just teach them a lesson. Yun Songlong sighed. His bright eyes landed on a few suspicious shadows in front of them. Although Zhou State hadn't been in a state of war these past few years, because of the appearance of blood cloud beasts and some demonic beasts, some areas weren't stable. The displaced commoners couldn't find a way to survive, so they could only become bandits. Watch me. Yun Sheng didn't bat an eyelid as she quickly chanted. In the graveyard, a few bandits were crawling on the ground. They were preparing to rob the 2 passers-by in the middle of the night. The bandits weren't very old. They ranged from 15 to 20 years old. The leader was a youth called Zhou Quan. Most of them knew some martial arts. The most powerful one, Zhou Quan, was even a martial arts master. They had been lying in ambush in the graveyard for nearly a month. When they were lucky, they would even encounter a few passers-by. Suddenly, a burning smell came from behind his ear. He was suspicious. Big Brother Zhou, behind you? His companion beside him let out a terrifying cry. Zhou Quan turned around to take a look. What he saw almost scared him to death. A fireball was eerily floating behind his head. When he moved slightly, the fireball moved with him. When he took a few steps, the fireball followed suit. What the hell? Boom! 5 or 6 fireballs suddenly floated above the graveyard. Every fireball seemed to have eyes as they crazily chased after the bandits. Ghost! There's a ghost! The bandits didn't care that they were in a graveyard. They scrambled and rushed forward. Rushing to the intersection ahead, he suddenly saw 2 people, one tall and one short. The man, who had lost an arm, was glaring at them with a murderous glare. The short girl looked at them with a smile. Under the firelight, the young girl's face was incomparably exquisite, and the dimples at the corner of her mouth were extremely sweet. She was holding a magic scepter in her hand. With a wave of her magic scepter, the 5 or 6 fireballs disappeared. You. So it was you guys who did this. Don't think that I'm afraid of you just because you're a magician. Xiangzi, come out and announce the slogan. Only then did Zhou Quan realize that he had been fooled. A short, dark-skinned teenager of 15 or 16 years old jumped out and smoothly recited, "This tree was planted by me, and this road was opened by me. If you want to pass through here, Zhou Quan and Wang Xiangzi of the Yun family army." Yun Songlong shouted coldly. Yes, yes. Upon hearing the dignified question, Zhou Quan and Changzi stood at attention and saluted as if it was a conditioned reflex, looking straight ahead. Cheng Su and Enai Kuan of the Yun family. Yes, yes. With Yun Songlong's shout, the bandits all stepped out of their ranks. After a while, the bandits were all shocked. Big Brother Zhou, something doesn't seem right. How did that person know our names? It was dark just now, so we didn't see what the man looked like. Why don't you go up and take a look? The bandits were frightened out of their wits by Yun Songlong's powerful shout. They pushed and shoved, and in the end, Zhou Quan was pushed to the front. If it wasn't dark, Yun Sheng would definitely see that Yun Songlong's face was as black as the bottom of a pot. He was a member of the Yun family army, yet he was actually committing a robbery on the side of the road, and it was in front of his own niece. Zhou Quan dawdled and walked in front of Yun Songlong. This guy was still afraid of death. He actually lit a match and moved closer to Yun Songlong to take a look. That face, that expression, Zhou Quan's mind was suddenly struck by lightning. His legs went soft, and the match almost burned his eyebrows. General, it's young General Yun. 4 to 5 uncouth men, all of whom were no less than 175 meters tall, uniformly knelt on the ground. Their knees went soft, and with 5 thuds, they all knelt on the ground. All of you don't have to play dead. Speak. Who gave you permission to rob here? How many robberies did you make? How much money did you rob? Tell me everything. If there is even the slightest lie, you will be punished according to military law. The news of Yun Songlong's return to the Yun family army was only spread among a small group of soldiers and generals. Tonight, the people who robbed Yun Sheng and the others were from different squads belonging to the Yun family army. The few of them did not expect that the robbery would actually involve their own general. General, we didn't have any other choice. These soldiers' faces were red as they reported all the robberies in the past month. Ever since Yun Sanchue cut off the Yun family army's salaries, they were all so poor that they couldn't afford to eat. Yun Songlong also didn't appear. These people were all Yun Songlong's former subordinates. They weren't willing to betray the Yun family army, nor were they willing to change jobs. However, every soldier had parents, wives, children, and children. Chapter 229. When Yun Songlong heard Yun Sheng's question, how could he not be shocked? He never thought that these brothers who had once risked their lives for the country would not even be able to receive the most basic relief. It was hard for him to reprimand them. Yun Songlong only felt as if there was a heavy rock pressing down on his heart, and he could not say another word. The oppressive atmosphere quickly spread among the crowd. Yun Sheng's words also made Yun Songlong realize something. The Yun family army currently had more than 1,000 soldiers. Their future, as well as how they were going to feed their families, were all problems. Second uncle, it is inevitable that the Yun family army will change jobs. I see that these brothers are all strong and healthy. If they become professional hunters, it would not be a bad idea. Yun Sheng had also seen the basic qualities of the soldiers in the Yun family army encampment. Other than the majority of them having a good foundation in martial arts, there were no less than 100 martial artists like Zhou Quan. There were also some who had some magic perception. These people were all soldiers in their early years and were strictly disciplined. As long as Yun Songlong gave the order, charging and breaking through enemy lines would not be a problem. If such a large group of people were not properly settled, they would definitely become an unpredictable factor. They would even be used against the Yun family by other people within Zhou State. It would be a good idea to turn them into hunters and form a hunting corps. Hunters. Yun Songlong could not help but frown. Changing a regular army into a hunting regiment, this idea was simply ridiculous. As long as we can eat, we don't have to go against our conscience, and we can continue to follow General Yun. Not to mention being hunters, we are even willing to be beggars. Zhou Quan and the others felt their minds clear up after being reminded by Yun Sheng. They had really been blinded by lard. If they did not want to be bandits, they could be hunters. A hunter's income would also be stable and enough to feed their families. Regarding this matter, I will discuss it with the generals in the encampment tomorrow and come to a conclusion. The few of you will receive your punishment yourselves. Each of you will receive 50 strokes of the cane. Yun Songlong was still thinking about Yun Sheng's words. Although Yun Sheng was still a child, Yun Songlong also realized that his niece was not simple. Perhaps she was right. Yun Sheng returned to the medicine hall. As soon as she entered the door, she saw Qi waiting there. What a rare guest. Why did you come to see me? Since she let Abandon taste the medicine, Abandon hadn't come to see Yun Sheng again. Abandon was still wearing a green cloak. Under the dim yellow light, one could see that his emerald green eyes were emitting a faint glow. Could it be that you've thought it through and agreed to let me treat your poison? Yun Sheng poured herself a glass of water and drank it. When Yun Sheng saw that Qiamo was silent, she knew that this twisted kid had finally figured it out. The poison in Qi's body was getting worse by the day. Although he didn't know where it came from, if he didn't treat it, it would definitely cause great damage to his body. If you can guarantee that you won't cripple my poison skills, I can let you treat me. Qiamo glanced at Yun Sheng. Under the light, Yun Sheng was slim and elegant. She was completely different from the little girl he first met 2 years ago. Qiamo felt his heart skip a beat. Thinking of Yi Baiming that day, that man who was like the king of the night, Qiamo's decision in his heart became even firmer. I can't guarantee it. Tell me first, what's the deal with the poison and magic in your body? Yun Sheng had long realized that the Dharma soul in Qiamo's body was different from any Dharma soul she knew. There were a few common Dharma souls in the boundless land: earth, wind, water, fire, light, darkness, and many other secondary Dharma souls. Qiamo's Dharma soul was obviously different from any of them. Even Teacher Mary couldn't tell what the magic attribute of Qiamo's Dharma soul was. The magic that Qiamo cultivated didn't belong to any element of magic. His magic was more of his own creation. The most powerful thing about it was the various poisons. I don't have a Dharma soul. The reason why I can use magic is because of little Qing. Qiamo found it difficult to tell his secret. As he spoke, a green snake slithered out from the bottom of his wide magic cloak. That was Qiamo's magic scepter, a living snake. Maybe you've realized that my magic cultivation speed is especially fast. Actually, it's not because my magic cultivation speed is fast, but because of the poison that little Qing swallowed. Yun Sheng only found out from Qiamo's mouth that Qiamo actually had such a unique way of cultivating magic. That was to use the toxicity of poison to improve his magic cultivation. Qiamo was an abandoned baby from the moment he was born. When he still had memories, he was already living with this green snake called Little Qing. I accidentally discovered that Little Qing was a magical beast, and I could use its Dharma soul to cultivate. Little Qing's method of cultivation was to use poison, from the initial poisonous grass to the poisonous magical beast, and then to the refined poison. It was also because of Little Qing's special cultivation method that Qiamo came to the Royal Magic Academy. Other people came to the Royal Magic Academy to cultivate magic, but Qiamo's only purpose in coming to the Royal Magic Academy was to find various kinds of highly toxic poisons. And in the Magic Academy, he met Teacher Mary, who was also an oddball from the potions department. Teacher Mary was the first person to know about my special situation. She was very kind. Not only did she accept me as her student, she also provided me with some herbs that could cure the poison. Like you, she also advised me to give up on cultivating poison, but I had to maintain my magic power. Qiamo gently stroked Little Qing, who was coiled up on his arm and spitting out its tongue comfortably. Because little Qing was a magical beast, it had been hunted down by a few summoners with ulterior motives. Chiemo also almost lost his life at the hands of those summoners. In order to protect little Qing, his poison cultivation became the only way for him to protect little Qing and himself. I see. Let me take a look. How's the spread of the poison? Yunsheng only understood Chimo's difficulties after hearing this. A magical beast that could increase its magic power by consuming poison was definitely very rare on the continent. It would easily attract the covetous of some summoners with ill intentions. No wonder Chiemo had insisted on rejecting her request the last time. But why did he change his mind after a few months? Yunsheng was puzzled. Yunsheng naturally didn't know that Chimo's current actions were because he had developed feelings for her. And Yi Baiming's appearance gave Chiemo a pressure that he had never felt before. She carefully checked Chimo's pulse and took some of Chimo's blood samples, deciding to do a thorough examination. Yunsheng and Chiemo didn't notice that when Chiemo was explaining his situation, a strange expression flashed across the green jade-like eyes of the little green snake coiled around his arm. I still need to do a thorough examination of your blood. You go back first. I'll inform you when I think of a solution. After Yunsheng sent Chiemo off, the deputy curator coincidentally walked in with a smile. Chapter 230. As Chi-Chi was leaving, he coincidentally bumped into Battle Force. Even though he was the deputy curator, Chi-Chi did not even greet him. He looked straight ahead and left. In reality, other than his companions in Group 13 and his mentor, Meili, Chi-Chi had never looked at anyone. This could be related to the fact that he was an orphan since young and was not very close to others. That kid is your companion? I remember that he is also from the Royal Magic Academy. He looks quite evil. Battle Force took a few more glances at Chi-Chi. Even if he met this youth, he would feel a chill run down his spine. That feeling was as if he was being stared at by an extremely powerful demonic beast. There were very few people who could make Battle Force, a Wuzong, feel this way, so Battle Force had some impression of Chi-Chi. He is my companion, Deputy Curator Chi. It is not a good habit to speak ill of others behind their backs. Yunsheng did not like to hear other people criticize her friends. Pretend I didn't say anything. Miracle Dr. Yun. The inventory of the medicine hall has been completed. Here are some ledgers. Please check them first. Battle Force knew Yunsheng's temper. He had already found out from Yun Songhai that Yunsheng was Yun Songhai's daughter. It had to be said that this girl's temper was typical of the Yun family. Once she set her mind on someone or something, even 10 carriages would not be able to pull her back. Also, here are 2 sect tokens. One is to thank you for becoming an elder of the medicine hall, and the other is to thank you for curing Songlong's illness. Battle Force was a man who kept his promises. He had promised Yunsheng that he would give her a sect token, but the second one was an extra gift. I will accept the first sect token, but I cannot accept the second one. Second uncle is my family. It is my duty to treat him. Yunsheng rejected Battle Force's good intentions. Second Uncle Yun was Battle Force's good friend, but also her own family. If her father knew that she had to accept a reward for treating her second uncle, he would be so angry that he would crawl out of bed. Zhanli couldn't help but smile. The longer he knew Yunsheng, the more he liked her. Sometimes she was calculative and wouldn't even let go of a small advantage, but sometimes she was very generous. However, this was also Yunsheng's greatest charm. Such a person could easily attract a group of close friends. Yunsheng ponders for a while. But if Deputy Director Zhan wants to repay me, why don't you do me a favor? I may not be able to stay in the pharmacy for a while. You must have heard about what happened to the Yun family army. I'm also a hunter myself, so I'm thinking of helping second uncle reorganize the Yun family army after I'm done with the medicinal hall. Part of the reason why combat strength came today was because of the Yun family army. Combat strength knew about the Yun family army. It was just that he had estimated Yun Songlong's illness, so he had not revealed his combat strength. That's fine too. Songlong and I have already given up on the Imperial Court after the last battle. It's impossible for us to stay in the army. Combat Strength pondered for a moment. Unexpectedly, he didn't oppose changing the Yun family army into a hunter corps. Combat Strength was originally from the grassroots. After he became the deputy director of Wuxian Wuji Library, he had some contact with hunters. If it wasn't for Yun Ba's persuasion, his most likely path would have been to become a hunter. When Yun Shang heard Combat Strength's tone, she also knew that something was wrong. She had also heard people say that Combat Strength was a fierce general of Zhou State in his early years. He and Yun Songlong were once known as the twin heroes of Zhou State. Both of them were martial artists. When they were less than 30 years old, they had already broken through to martial marquis. However, in a battle, one of them retired and the other was crippled. However, in front of others, Combat Strength had never mentioned the defeat that year. What exactly happened? Deputy Director, I've always wanted to ask why my second uncle was defeated that year. I've always been thinking, how did his hand get injured? Yun Shang saw that Combat Strength had sunk into deep thought, so she took the opportunity to ask. Your second uncle, he was deceived by a woman. I don't know the specifics of the matter. I only know that at that time, we were attacked by the allied forces of later Qin and Tang Yuan. Breaking out of the encirclement is imperative. Combat Strength's expression was agitated. He had been the deputy director of Wuxian Wuji Library for many years and had cultivated himself well. However, at this moment, he couldn't help but be filled with righteous indignation. His words were filled with resentment. That year, Zhou State and the allied forces of Tang and Qin were at war at the southern border of Zhou State. Yun Songlong and Combat Strength led the army into battle. When the two of them worked together, they were like a hot knife through butter, killing countless enemies along the way. However, later Qin was sinister. One night, the army's medical personnel actually poisoned the water supply. Zhou State's army wasn't poisoned. When Yun Songlong saw this, he ordered a group of soldiers to break out of the encirclement. At that time, according to the army's map, Yun Songlong and Combat Strength believed that if they broke out from the north, there would be fewer defenders and it would be safer. However, when the Yun family army was about to break out of the encirclement, they suddenly heard that the allied forces of Tang and Qin had gone up north to Zhou State's border cities and massacred them. When Yun Songlong heard this, he knew that the other side might have a large number of troops lying in ambush. However, he still decided to lead 1,000 people to the border cities to break out of the encirclement. No matter how Combat Strength tried to dissuade him, Yun Songlong still insisted on going. Yun Songlong was a calm person and his army had always been well organized. However, that time, he seemed to have lost his composure. What was even more hateful was that when we received news that the Yun family army was deep in the south and sent a letter to the court asking for help, the Marquis of Jiayun didn't move, allowing your second uncle and the Yun family army to fight a bloody battle in the south for 3 days and 3 nights. When your grandfather received the news and sent reinforcements, the Yun family army was almost completely wiped out. When Combat Strength said this, his tiger eyes were already filled with tears. After Yun Ba rushed over, he was alone. At the age of 60, he killed his way into the southern cities with a giant axe. He broke through the heavy encirclement and killed more than 1,000 soldiers of the allied forces of Tang and Qin. At that time, the southern cities were filled with mountains of corpses and seas of bones. When the martial saint appeared, even the allied forces of Tang and Qin had to retreat. When Yun Ba rushed out with Yun Songlong, whose right arm had been chopped off and his left arm crippled, Combat Strength and a group of old subordinates, thousands of 7-foot-tall men, wept bitterly. My second uncle is a true man. Even though it had been many years, Yun Shang still felt her blood boil when she heard Combat Strength talk about the past. Yun Songlong might have been rash, but he had inherited the Yun family army's motto. If he didn't serve the people, how could he be a soldier? Since then, many of the Zhou State soldiers, led by Combat Strength, were extremely disappointed with the Zhou State's imperial army. They chose to retire early and leave the army camp. When Yun Ba found out that Combat Strength wanted to leave the army camp, he went to persuade him. He knew that Combat Strength no longer had the heart to bathe in blood on the battlefield for the country. In the end, he could only persuade Combat Strength. Your army's morale is already dead, but your martial spirit is still there. Zhou State's army camp is weak, but Zhou State's thousands of martial artists are still standing strong. The future of Zhou State does not rely on the army camp, but on the thousands of martial artists. After combat strength received some guidance, he was recommended to enter Wuxuan Wuji Martial Arts Institute and became the deputy head of Wuxuan Wuji Martial Arts Institute. As for Yun Songlong, after that battle, his body was crippled and his will was dispirited. He was trapped by his battle trauma and had been hiding in the Yun residence. It was only when Yun Sheng appeared that the situation took a turn for the better. Chapter 231. Deputy Curator, Sheng, still doesn't understand one thing. Back then, second uncle didn't listen to our advice and led the army to defend the city. However, the Yun family army only had a little more than 1,000 people, while the Tang and Qin allied forces numbered in the tens of thousands. How did second uncle survive those 3 days and 3 nights before old General Yun arrived? Yun Sheng was also somewhat puzzled. Later Qin and Tang Yuan were both tigers and wolves. They were fully prepared. So how could they not take down the city for so long? Not only me, but even your grandfather. Old General Yun is also puzzled about this. Yunba and Zhanli both thought that Yun Songlong had died in battle. Now that you mention it, I remember that when I led my former subordinates to break out of the encirclement from the north, I heard a faintly discernible sound of a zither in the south. That sound was faintly discernible and lasted for 3 days and 3 nights. Many years had passed, so Zhanli's memory was not that clear. As for whether that sound was real or fake, Zhanli wasn't sure either. The Dihong song. Yun Sheng was certain that someone must have been playing the Dihong song at that time. Look at me. Why am I telling you all these old stories? I'm here today mainly for the medicinal hall. Zhanli coughed. Half a month had passed since Elder Zhang's fall from power. The medicinal hall had also completed the most preliminary inventory. Zhanli had come to give Yun Sheng an inventory list, which listed most of the medicinal hall's assets, medicinal herbs, and some of Elder Zhang's personal wealth. Although Elder Zhang's character wasn't very good, it had to be said that as a person, he definitely had his good points. The old man's ability to accumulate wealth was unparalleled. When he fled that day, he was in a hurry and left the huge amount of wealth that he had accumulated over the years in the medicinal hall's secret chamber. After Zhanli led people to search, they took away the gold coins and some of the more expensive medicinal herbs. However, they also found 10 storage rings in the secret chamber. There was a personal seal placed on the storage ring. Looking at combat strength, other than Elder Zhang, no one else could break it. If he forcefully broke the seal, the things inside the ring would be destroyed. Thus, combat strength casually threw the storage ring to the side. After exchanging a few more words with Yun Sheng, Zhanli suddenly remembered something. Since we're going to establish a hunter corps, we definitely need manpower. How about this? I'll assign Yi Baiming and Cheng Bai to you. If you need anything, just let me know. There's no need to inform me. It's getting late, so I'll take my leave first. When Yun Sheng heard this, she did not refuse. After all, Yi Baiming and Cheng Bai were 2 great generals. She had to make good use of them. Seeing that Zhanli had left, Yun Sheng immediately took back the few storage rings that he had casually thrown away. To other people, the seals on the storage rings could not be broken. However, this was not the case for Yun Sheng. She had the puffed egg in her hands. The puffed egg could break all magical seals and restrictions. Yun Sheng summoned the puffed egg and very smoothly broke the seals on the 10 storage rings. She then looted a lot of things from the rings. Looking at the pair of items, Yun Sheng instantly felt a sense of ecstasy, as if she had become rich overnight. Among the 10 storage rings, there were 10 anonymous limitless gold cards. Each card had 50,000 limitless gold coins. These were all obtained by Elder Zhang when he accepted bribes from the students or embezzled money from the medicinal herb suppliers. In addition, there were 2 limitless purple gold cards. There were 200,000 limitless purple gold cards each. If converted to the continent's gold coins, that would be 2 million gold coins. However, the gold coins were not the most important thing. Yunsheng also found a large amount of precious medicinal herbs. Among them, there were even saint-grade medicinal herbs. It could be seen that Elder Zhang had put in a lot of effort to get these things. Yunsheng was not polite. She stuffed all the limitless gold cards and medicinal herbs into her beast language ring. After the establishment of the Xiantong, they needed to purchase a large number of medicinal herbs. As a result, the wealth in the tin storage rings was particularly precious. After carefully examining the tin storage rings, Yunsheng found a prescription in the last storage ring. That prescription was placed together with the limitless purple gold card. It looked like a very ordinary prescription. However, if it was placed together with the limitless purple gold card, then it must not be an ordinary prescription. Yunsheng carefully looked at it. The words, Sage 10,000 Golden Pill, entered her eyes. 10,000 golden pill? The implication was that a 10,000 golden pill was worth 10,000 gold coins. Moreover, it was very likely that it was worth 10,000 purple gold coins. Yunsheng's eyelids jumped. On the continent, even high-grade and finished products were only worth 1,000 gold coins. This prescription, was it possible that it was a top-grade or even a saint-grade medicinal pill? Yunsheng continued to look at the ingredients of the prescription. Sage 10,000 leaves and yellow lotus jade. Prescription effect. Repair magic soul. Regrow severed limbs. When she saw the words, Yunsheng's eyes lit up. Regrow severed limbs? Yunsheng immediately thought of her second uncle Yun Songlong. She didn't expect that she would find such a magical prescription in Elder Zhang's storage ring. But why didn't Elder Zhang refine this kind of medicine? Yunsheng looked at the ingredients one by one. After looking at them, she couldn't help but bitterly smile. It was no wonder that a single sage herb myriad gold pill was worth 10,000 purple gold coins. Just the 6-leaf sage herb alone was already a huge problem. The medicinal herbs on the continent were divided into mortal grade, treasure grade, top grade, saint grade, and divine grade. The corresponding medicinal pills refined from them were primary grade, middle grade, high grade, saint grade, and divine grade. Treasure grade medicinal herbs weren't hard to find in Jade Capital. The medicinal hall of Wushuan Limitless Building that Yunsheng was in also had the corresponding medicinal herbs. However, medicinal herbs above saint grade, or even saint grade, were rarely seen. Sage 10,000 leaves was a saint grade medicinal herb. Legend had it that sage 10,000 leaves gathered moonlight and water elements in a cold place to form a magical medicine. It took 100 years to germinate, and after that, it would grow a leaf every 100 years. A sage 10,000 leaves that was used to refine sage 10,000 leaves would have at least 6 leaves. That meant that only sage 10,000 leaves that were 600 years old and above could refine sage 10,000 leaves. Yunsheng had also inquired about it before. In the past few years, sage 10,000 leaves that were above 6th grade had appeared in the vicinity of later Qin Sunset City. Furthermore, it was already over 100 years ago. Elder Zhang had also obtained this prescription by chance. It was also because he didn't have the ingredients that he didn't refine this kind of medicinal pill. Looks like I still have to look around and get Dr. Fan and Wanlong Gambling House to help. Yunsheng could only put the prescription aside for the time being. In the next few days, Yunsheng began to tidy up the medicinal hall. She stored the beast blood solvent once again, and the female martial artist from outside the hall started to fuse the beast blood together with acupuncture. Including the Oriole, the new batch of female martial artists who had entered the hall all obtained pretty good results after fusing the beast blood for the first time. Most of them had their bones and marrow cleansed, greatly increasing their physique. However, there was still a small group of people, especially the Oriole, who surprised Yunsheng the most. The Oriole was originally just an ordinary person who had roughly cultivated battle chi, but after fusing with the beast blood, the Oriole actually broke through the most basic martial student and advanced to the peak of martial warrior. Seeing that the effects of the beast blood solvent were so good, Yunsheng also decided to use this method on the Yun family army. After considering it for a few days, Yun Songlong finally felt that Yunsheng's suggestion was good. Reorganizing the Yun family army into hunting troops was the most reliable method. After Yunsheng heard this, she decided to cooperate with Yun Songlong to tidy up the Yun family army. Chapter 232. After knowing that Yun Shang was going to start reorganizing the Yun army, Oriol also volunteered to head to the Yun army. Hearing that young General Yun had returned, the soldiers of the Yun army were all excited. They all swarmed to the entrance of the encampment. "Everyone, long time no see. I'm back." Yun Songlong looked at the faces of his old subordinates, his heart filled with emotion. "General Yun, it's good that you're back. As long as you're still here, we will follow you to death." Everyone spoke one after another, looking very excited. Yun Shang carefully sized them up and quickly saw the basic structure of the Yun family army. Most of these people had followed Yun Songlong in the past, so most of them were in their 30s or 40s. There were also some who had just joined the army and were in their 20s. In the entire camp, there were about 200 to 300 soldiers in their 20s, 400 to 500 soldiers in their 30s or 40s, and the rest were veterans in their 40s who were about the same age as Oriol's father. Because they had not been paid for many years, other than people like Zhou Quan who knew how to be flexible, the rest were all thin and looked very frail. "Everyone, quiet down. I'm here today to announce a piece of news. I'm sure you all know that I've left the Yun residence. For everyone's future livelihood, I've thought about it and decided to disband the Yun army." Yun Songlong's voice fell. The group of soldiers who were originally cheering were instantly dumbfounded. From the initial joy, it turned into fury. "We don't want to disband. How can the Yun residents disband us?" There were even more furious soldiers who wanted to step forward and question Yun Songlong. It was no wonder that the soldiers were so agitated. Most of them had been soldiers for 3 generations and were all part of the Yun army. Back then, when they were defeated, many of their brothers and fathers had died on the battlefield. The reason why they never abandoned the Yun family army was because of the concept that had been formed over the years. They were born as members of the Yun family army, and they would die as ghosts of the Yun family army. These people came wave after wave, making it impossible for Yun Songlong to finish his words. When Yun Shang saw this, she waved the magic scepter in her hand. In an instant, a fiery explosion smashed into the camp like thunder from the 9th heaven. Everyone was silent. Only then did they notice that there were 2 girls who came with General Yun. One of them looked unfamiliar, while the other was Huang Xiaowei's daughter, Oriol. "Oriol, why are you with them? And what's the matter with that female magician?" The soldiers were shocked by Yun Shang, but what surprised them even more was the Oriol. Most of the children who grew up in the military camp were very familiar with it. It could be said that many people here had watched the Oriol grow up. Previously, she was a sallow and emaciated girl from a poor family who had to go out to sing. However, after not seeing her for half a month, she had completely changed. She was taller and more muscular. The most surprising thing was that she was wearing a white warrior's robe. That was the martial arts robe of Wushuan Limitless School. "Uncles, brothers, please calm down and listen to what General Yun has to say." Oriol was now a warrior. She was no longer the shy singer she used to be. She puffed out her chest and persuaded loudly. "Brothers, I'm sorry. It's been hard on you all these years." Yun Songlong bowed deeply to the crowd. "General Yun, General, don't be like this." "Brothers." The soldiers also choked with tears in their eyes. The Yun family army was once glorious, but they did not expect the Yun family army to fall to such a state. "Everyone, there's no need to be sad." Second uncle said that he wants to disband the Yun family army, but it's not a true disbandment. "We plan to change the Yun family army into a hunting corps," Yun Shang said. She suddenly opened her mouth. Everyone was stunned. Then they heard her call Yun Songlong's second uncle. Change to a hunting corps? From soldiers to hunters. Most of the people in the Yun family army were unable to accept this result. "We don't want to be hunters. Hunters are bandits and hooligans. We are regular soldiers. How can we be compared to those hooligans?" Someone muttered in dissatisfaction. "Hunters earn money by doing missions. They were used to eating the food of the country." For a moment, they were unable to accept this change. "Who said that hunters are bandits and hooligans?" Do you know how much a normal D-rank hunter in Zhou State earns in a year? 50 gold coins. If you reach C rank, you'll earn at least 100 gold coins. If you join the hunting corps, you can even get bonus. Yunshang had been with Huang Ting and the other two for a while. She was very familiar with the market for hunters. Hearing that hunters earned such a high salary, some people hesitated. They had suffered in the Yun family army for many years. Which family wasn't poor? So what if the salary is high? Hunters can't get promoted. Being a soldier is different. It's something that brings honor to the family. Some people still disagreed. In the end, these soldiers were still not enlightened. Yun Songlong frowned. This was a little tricky. If everyone disagreed, the plan to change the Yun family army into a hunting corps would have to be aborted. Brothers, Yun Songlong said in a low voice. So what if I get promoted? You're all good brothers who have gone through fire and water with me. You've seen what happened to me. I, Yun Songlong, was born in Zhou State's Marshal St. General's mansion. For the first 10 years, my career was smooth, but I've never felt that it was an honor. Because I know that the higher my rank, the more brothers' blood will be spilled on the battlefield. Yun Songlong let out a long sigh. Everyone in the Yun residence and your brothers and uncles defended the city to the death. In the end, we didn't manage to wait for the reinforcements from Zhou State. My second uncle has been recuperating in the residence for many years. The Emperor of Zhou State has never visited him. The military has also never given any subsidies to the veterans. Yun Shang took the opportunity to add fuel to the fire. Don't tell me that your sons and daughters will also be spilled on the battlefield for Zhou State in the future? Batch after batch, they shed their blood for Zhou State, only to end up with nothing in the end? Yun Shang's words became the last straw that crushed the hearts of the Yun family army. Uncles, brothers, Oriol's father was injured on the battlefield and hasn't recovered. Oriol knows that many of my aunts and sisters can't go out to sing or even sell their bodies because of this. Oriol wiped the corners of her eyes. Yun Shang, who was watching from the side, gave her a thumbs up. In modern times, Oriol's acting skills were definitely Oscar material for the Best Supporting Actress. Stop talking. Zhou Quan was the first to jump out. They say that a real man has to have a country first and a family second. 2e. F***K off. If you have a country and a family, if you can't even protect a small family, how can you talk about a country? Leave these pompous words to those dog-like officials and nobles who live in a drunken stupor. We're going to be hunters. General Yun is the commander. Everyone, don't you think so? Zhou Quan and the others shouted in unison. Thank you for Lanlin's tip, Chapter 233. As Yun Shang watched, no matter how she looked at it, it felt like she was forcing a good girl into prostitution and becoming an outlaw. But at least she had achieved her goal. Wait a moment, the Yun family army has changed into the hunting corps. My second uncle is the regiment commander. That's right. But not everyone can become a hunter. We need to eliminate the weak. Among all of you, only those who can meet the basic requirements can join the newly established hunting corps. When Yun Shang said this, the hunters who had already calmed down immediately became agitated again. Where did this little girl come from? She's making a racket in our Yun family army. When we were risking our lives on the battlefield, you were still playing in the mud. The soldiers cursed. Zhou Quan, who was at the side, anxiously scratched his head. If not for the fact that Yun Shang called Yun Songlong's second uncle, who knew what dirty jokes would have come out of this group of boorish men's mouths. When Zhou Quan heard this, his hair stood on end. Oh no, this group of people who didn't fear death, they still didn't know the power of this little fiend from the Yun family. I know you guys are not convinced. I forgot to tell you guys, second uncle is your regiment commander, and I will be your vice regiment commander from now on. Whoever is not convinced, come out and compete. The opponent is the Oriole. I forgot to mention, she is the first female hunter that our regiment has just recruited. Yun Shang placed the Oriole in front of everyone. Oriole? Wasn't that the daughter of Huang Xiaowei's family? How could such a lass who couldn't even carry a weapon be a hunter? The soldiers instantly regained their strength. If even the Oriole could become a hunter, what were they worried about? They were the Yun family army after all, and had killed people in their early years and gone onto the battlefield. Let's compete. As long as we win, we'll be considered victorious, right? A few tall and burly middle-aged soldiers with dark faces walked out. I'll give you two choices. The first is called the weighted horse riding stance. Anyone who can defeat the Oriole can stay and become a hunter. The second one is called bone marrow cleansing. I have a special beast blood solvent here that can improve one's physique. If you can successfully pass the bone marrow cleansing, you can still stay. Yun Shang explained the recruitment rules of the hunting corps in a few words. The hunting corps did not raise useless people. The Yun family army had more than 1,000 people, so it was inevitable that only the fittest would survive. The hunters were stimulated by Yun Shang. Thinking that they still had 2 more chances, they all became excited. Among all the choices, the easiest one was undoubtedly the first one, which was to compete with the Oriole in the horse riding stance. How difficult could it be to stand in the horse stance? Official members will have the opportunity to obtain a set of Wuxuan Limitless School's battle techniques. After Yunsheng finished speaking, she prepared a set of weapons and hemostatic medicine and gave them to everyone. Without rations or water, they would enter the Lemar Hills in the western part of Zhou State, which was known as the Death Hill. Even Yun Songlong did not know about Yunsheng's decision. He originally thought that there would be someone among the soldiers who would stand out to refute her, but to Yun Songlong's surprise, no one stood out. They silently took the weapons and hemostatic medicine. 10 people in a row, a total of 20 rows, and headed towards the northwest. They were not idiots. Although the horse riding stance and bone marrow cleansing was extremely difficult, they all discovered that during this process, the dou-qi in their bodies had increased by a large amount in a short period of time. They wanted to survive. They wanted to become the hunting corps that would shock Zhou State and even the entire continent. Everything that happened today was just the beginning. A month later, when the 200 Yun family soldiers, who looked like beggars, returned to their encampment, their clothes were ragged and their bodies were covered with all kinds of wounds. However, their eyes were as bright as snow, emitting a radiance that was not inferior to that of wild beasts. The soldiers who were still guarding the encampment almost could not recognize them. In an orderly manner, the 200 people, without exception, brought the 4th-level magical beasts they brought back to Yun Sheng and Yun Songlong. None of the 200 people died. All of them completed their mission. They knelt down in unison. Their movements were orderly and uniform. Their voices pierced through the sea of clouds. General Yun, young Master Yun, we are back. In an instant, the Yun family encampment was filled with thunderous cheers from top to bottom. After 8 years, the Yun family army that had been silent for a long time was disbanded. A new hunting corps named Sky Attack was quietly registered and established in Zhou State's hunting corps. Chapter 234. Not long after the Sky Expedition Hunting Corps was established, Yun Songlong changed the way everyone addressed him in order to avoid suspicion. Everyone called him Regiment Leader Yun. Yun Shang also had another nickname in the hunting corps. It wasn't some vice regiment leader. Behind their backs, all the hunters called Yun Shang Young Master Yun. Yun Shang's previous training made the entire hunting corps fearful of her. The regiment leader was the Lord, so the vice regiment leader was naturally Young Master Yun. If the regiment leader was angry, they would be punished according to military law. But if Young Master Yun was angry, the consequences would be severe. Not long after the hunting corps was established, everyone couldn't wait to register their names in the Hunters Guild to accept missions. But after a long time, the Sky Expedition Hunting Corps still hadn't received a single mission. This made the hunters who originally thought that they would be able to start work very quickly feel a little depressed. Yun Shang was used to it. Huang Ting and the other two were on a mission in another country. But when Wenren Xiu found out that Yun Shang wanted to establish a hunting corps, she had already reminded Yun Shang. Before a hunting corps became famous, it would take about 1 to 2 years. This was because the hunting corps also had a process of accumulating fame. Yunsheng mentally prepared herself and secretly gave some money to second uncle. She had already prepared herself to endure for the next 1 to 2 years. Who knew that not long after, there would be an unexpected piece of news. The Sky Expedition Hunting Corps had received a mission, and it was a team mission. After Yunsheng heard this news from the Oriole, she immediately rushed back to the encampment. At the encampment, she even met someone unexpected. "Why are the two of you here?" Yunsheng discovered Yi Baiming and Cheng Bai in the encampment. "Hey, young Master Yun. These two brothers said that they are your men and are here to support us in completing this mission." Zhou Quan and the rest of the brothers heard Yunsheng's voice, and all of them excitedly came out. Zhou Quan's face was filled with excitement. He was the one who had discovered the first mission of the Sky Hunting Corps. If he hadn't been quick enough, such a good mission would have been snatched away by someone else. "We're here to help. Don't you know who issued the mission your hunters just accepted?" Yi Baiming smiled. Combat Strength said that she could send Yi Baiming and Cheng Bai to serve Yunsheng, but Yunsheng admitted that she couldn't move these two big shots, so she didn't invite them over. Who knew that the two of them were also well informed? They had rushed over the moment the hunting squad received their first mission. "Zhou Quan, tell me, what's going on with this mission?" Yunsheng also felt that something was amiss. "This is an international mission, and the reward is 500 gold coins. The client is a girl, a delicate girl." Zhou Quan chuckled. As usual, he went to the Hunters Guild to see if there were any suitable missions for the hunting squad. Coincidentally, he met a delicate girl who was accompanied by a maid. From her dressing, he could tell that she was a young miss from a wealthy family. That young miss obviously didn't frequent places like the Hunters Guild. She paced back and forth at the entrance for a while, but didn't enter. Zhou Quan went forward to ask and found out that the young miss was planning to go to Laterchin to collect a type of medicinal herb. She needed some hunters to escort her. Did the young miss say what type of herb it was? Yunsheng felt that something was amiss. If it was just a normal herb, why would she need to go to Laterchin to collect it? Zhou Quan was most likely tricked by someone. What's it called again? Something leaf something ginseng. I heard that it's a type of herb that grows beside Luoxia City in Laterchin. Zhou Quan was a boor and didn't know many words. He remembered that the young miss took out a picture. Isn't the herb on the picture purple in color? Does it have many leaves and looks similar to ginseng? Yunsheng's heart thumped as she felt that something was wrong. "Yes, young Master Yun, you're really amazing. It's as if you saw it with your own eyes. It's purple like ginseng." Zhou Quan laughed foolishly. Multi-leafed sage ginseng. This idiot. He actually agreed to help someone find a holy herb. "Don't tell me that you took the initiative to accept the mission?" Yunsheng rubbed her eyebrows. She shouldn't have chosen Zhou Quan to be the liaison for the hunting squad. That young miss gave me 100 gold coins as a deposit and asked me to choose 20 hunters to set off with them. 3 days later, we will meet at the East City Gate. After collecting the herb, I will pay the remaining 400 gold coins. Zhou Quan saw that the other party was straightforward and thought about the 20 hunters. After deducting the 100 gold coins, there would still be 400 gold coins left. 20 gold coins per person was quite worth it. After all, Zhou State and Laterchin were neighbors. That young miss also agreed to cover all the expenses along the way. In Zhou Quan's eyes, this kind of mission was a good deal that fell from the sky. Yunsheng was depressed when she heard this. Only newcomers like the Heaven Expedition hunting squad wouldn't know what a 6-leafed sage ginseng was. Moreover, 6-leafed sage ginseng might not even appear in Luoxia City. How could a holy herb be collected just because they wanted to? This time, Brother Zhou is going to make a big mistake. 20 hunters are far from enough. Do you know the true identity of that young miss? And this time, who exactly is the client behind the scenes? Yi Baiming's face was full of emotions when he heard the whole story. It's that idiot crown prince, Yi Balian. As for the person who gave the mission, it's Chun Lian. Cheng Bai interrupted. What? It was actually that arrogant and idiotic crown prince who gave the mission? After Yunsheng heard about the person who gave the mission, she understood that they couldn't escape from this mission. Moreover, Zhou Quan had already accepted the other party's deposit. According to the Hunters Guild's rules, New hunting squads weren't allowed to break the contract after receiving the deposit. If they broke the contract, all the members of the hunting squad would be added to the Hunters Guild's blacklist. In the next 12 months, they wouldn't be allowed to accept any missions. However, while Yunsheng was vexed, she immediately came up with an idea. If the news about the six-leafed sage ginseng was really released by Yi Balian and Chenlian, then the news about the purple ginseng in Laterchin's Luoxia city might be true. Previously, she didn't have any news about the six-leafed sage ginseng. If they could really find the six-leafed sage ginseng, then there might be hope for the sage ginseng 10,000 kilogram pill that could cure Second Uncle's arm. Night Fox, what exactly is going on? If the Crown Prince wanted to find the herb, why didn't he directly send the army to search for it? Instead, why did he hide it and hire a civilian hunting squad? Yunsheng was very suspicious. We have to start from the Blood Cloud Beast to explain the ins and outs of the matter. We also accidentally found out that the Crown Prince was injured and urgently needed the holy herb sage ginseng that had 6-leafed and above to treat his injury. Yi Baiming finally told Yunsheng the news that he had heard earlier. You're tuning into the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.